Head to Knoxville, don't be late. Baker's Live, it's gonna be great. June 5th and 6th, mark your date at Dollywood, we'll celebrate. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. Rides, fun, and meet and greet. Baker and pals, the crew's so sweet. Get ready for laughs, cheers, and thrills. Knoxville's the place, it's giving chills. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. June 5th and 6th, don't miss the fun. Meet Baker and friends, it's second to none. Don't miss the fun. Meet Baker and friends, it's second to none.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whoever you are, what if any you might be. And Jamie is mad because she watched the first trial and she is yelling at me constantly saying, "You fat idiot, can't you understand that the police officer who testified about the Google searches is stupid?" And I say, well, Jamie, it's for his team to prove that the Google search. Don't run your mouth or I will give you the hand again. And I say, but Jamie, you have to remember the facts that his team is asking questions like a 5-year-old toddler who wants to tell you why they should have Acrostables with raspberry and peanut butter and jam, I think is the one we saw in Discord. And Jamie says, do you know I'm bringing Irish? Do you know she has the chancla? And I said, Jamie, that's a threat. And she said, it's not a threat if I'm going to do it. So...
That's exactly how our conversation went.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little eye-opening when I actually watched it, and I was like, oh my God, he's the Trooper Paul of Google search experts. When he said, I don't know what UTC time is, that lost me.
I just listened to Todd's lawyer's opening statement. The last sentence in the opening is, while he basically said that the jury would find there was no doubt about his guilt. Well, you can read that two ways.
Oh yeah, and he started off real great too, because this prosecuting woman was something else, and then he comes in and goes, I agree with pretty much everything she said, except it wasn't Todd. But it was just like, why? That's a stupid way to start something. And he was so lazy that whole trial with like no pep in his step at all. It was rough. It was rough to watch.
But we have to look at the facts. The facts is his new team has to prove there is enough there.
Yeah.
And so far they haven't. And the way they are going about it with this constantly switching. So you have the laughing lady. She's okay. Then you have the tech lady. I thought she would be good. She couldn't even read her own notes. It was horrible Friday. the way she was asking questions. And I know I didn't stream the afternoon part, but I watched parts of it, and everything they got out of his lawyer, the state just, did you believe it was an accident? No. Do you believe that based on what you saw that someone must have done it? Yeah. Again, I don't feel like they're prepared for this trial. I'm sorry. I think that there could. I'm not. The tech evidence, I thought that was stupid with the, well, he couldn't have searched it because he was in a tractor at that time. Is a weak argument, but still, if there's 3,000 pages and they just look at 11 of them, yeah, it's also very, very convenient that, oh yeah, these 11 pages that could imply something must have been him.
Well,
But
especially since the lawyer wasn't even hammering down really like the time frames, because when they told him, when he said he was just reading it off as 1 a.m, UTC, but like he was reading it as like 1 a.m, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And
and
they
1 in
weren't,
the morning, that time would be 8 o'clock in the evening.
yeah, so he wasn't nailing down. So
No,
he's testifying
7.
all these times and they're like, you don't know what UTC is, do you? No. Okay,
Yeah.
I was just reading it as it's written, and it's like, why are you not hammering into that, lawyer guy? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
it makes a big difference.
But it's still, as long as he asks questions, you can't claim ineffective counsel, and that's the big problem. Is everyone is sitting here saying, well, he was a bad lawyer. Tons of them.
Hmm.
There's a million bad lawyers, but as long as he put on a kind of a defense, you can't really go for ineffective counsel. Unless they
I
can
think that's
prove
what
that he gave him tons of exculpatory evidence and he just said, nah, I don't want to use it. I can't
yeah,
see how they can get the judge to jump on that one. And oh, by the way, thank you so much to my wonderful guest yesterday, the 2 BCs, Brandy Churchwell and Brother Counsel. And thank you all who showed up. It was it went by a little fast when you have 1,700 people chatting, but I hope you got it. The big problem with these panel shows is we get into a talk and then people are asking questions and you want to ask them, but then someone is asking another one a question and then you get a question and then you think, oh, by the way, did you think about that? So sorry if we didn't get exactly to your question and didn't. But that's how it is when we have very good talkers on the panel and they have interesting thoughts, because then you'll get interesting thoughts and then you have to ask a question and then it was fun. Jamie
yeah, it
didn't
was
watch
good.
it was too late, she was sleeping.
I was monitoring.
You were sleeping.
Why? It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was awake.
Well, I rest my case. Jamie was sleeping. What's the over-under on when they're going to start? Because they are present in the courtroom now, but they are always half an hour late on a good day. Then they'll take a break after 10 minutes. Can't believe it takes so much. I never do, and I never did it yesterday. Zach had been in early with some questions for Brandy. I think it was for Brandy, but I can't understand what Zach's saying. I'm pretty sure he's dyslexic or something, because it's not real words he uses. And for those of you who are wondering, it's English. It's a hard language. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. we will cover the Karen Reed stuff. This has kind of been a placeholder, and it's moving so slow. So we're going back to the Karen Reed stuff tomorrow, because tomorrow is motion hearing, and surprise, surprise, there's a new notice of discovery filed from the Commonwealth, who filed last week that they had turned over all their discovery. More Sallyport videos from the video system that overrides everything after 30 days. Jamie, it doesn't exist.
How does
It's
that make sense, everybody?
have you tried not thinking about it?
Yeah, but then I can't make it make sense. Yeah, I
No,
mean,
no,
if you
but
don't
if you
think
don't
about it,
think
you
about
just
how it
throw it
makes
all out the
sense,
window.
then it makes total sense.
Oh yeah, you can justify it if you wanted to.
Brother Counsel is so easy to follow when he explains the legalese. Yes, and never had a talk with him before, and he was wonderful. We've been lucky with all the guests we ever had, Jamie.
Hmm.
Well, we had Zach on that, but 1 dot in 2.5 years. That's okay.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, it was weird when he asked if he could take his clothes off, and I said no.
He asked that.
And he said, "Well, I think the ladies would love if I slapped myself with a codfish." And I said, "Please don't do that."
Oh, thanks for saving all of us.
Yeah, he's a weirdo. I said,
I
"Save
don't.
it for the
You
OF."
don't need to bring the fish into it.
Yeah, Jamie was okay with the topless part, but the fish, that was too weird. But no, it's going to be a big week in the Karen Reed case this week. We're going to be a big week for Turtle Boy as well. He also have a hearing on Wednesday, I believe it is, for his charges. So it's going to be interesting.
It's gonna be a busy day.
And we will be joined, of course, tomorrow by the wonderful Mr. Valhalla. Wednesday, it'll be me and Valhalla. Maybe Jamie. She's probably getting ready to travel, so I don't know if she'll be up for it Wednesday. Thursday, there's no trial. Friday, Marissa will be running the show because I'll be. Well, I don't know if Jamie needs a nap. Maybe I'll jump on it sometimes, but I can't do it all day because I have to take Jamie out. And she said, "Pickled herrings, is it as good as I've
God.
told?" And I said, "Yes." And she said,
Yeah.
"Give me that herring. I'll show Zach what fish is like."
No.
I'm pretty sure that, again, it's an exact.
Do you like pickled herring?
Yeah, it's good.
Oh.
Well, it depends on. There's different kinds of pickled herring. You have the normal one. That's good. Put a little curry salad on top of it, some raw onions, and it's good on your rye bread. And then you can have the ones that's pickled herring that's put it into the curry. So that's good. Then we have some red ones. I don't even know what it is, but I don't like those. So pickled herring is great. Pernilla, you're Swedish. Enough said.
You guys are crazy. I don't like seafood. I thought you only like shrimps though.
No. Pickled herring. No, I don't like boiled fish and stuff like that. Deep fried fish or like a pickled herring. I don't like smoked fish either. It's not my thing. Pickled herring doesn't smell. It's not like Swedish people eat the weird stuff. They eat that surströmming. That's not real. Lutfish is weird, but that's Norwegian.
Oh goodness. Yeah, we'll see about Wednesday. I know tomorrow I'm having my last day at work and I probably will just be lurking, but Wednesday, if I can get everything I need done, I think I should be good. Hang out for a little bit. Because I don't leave till Thursday in the evening. So
Sadly, this is the last day Rage Crusade is going to be on the channel, Jamie. It was nice having her, but
oh, I seen that. It looked delicious.
I'm going to take you to an Ikea, and you can. It's food in a food court in a furniture store, but I'll take you to not far from where you're staying, we have like 2 big malls, and that's one of them. I believe there's an Ikea in that one. I haven't been there in 10 years, but I bet I can find it there. And then I'll give you some meatballs and some lingonberry sauce, and I won't eat it because it's Swedish and it's nasty.
You really don't like it at
I
all?
don't like Sweden, Jamie. This is the Swedish national dish. I don't like it.
Oh, Baker.
I'll have some Danish meatballs. They're superior in every way.
Well, I want to try those too, because I heard they're pretty good. Try both. See which one I like better.
Well, if you eat at Ikea, it's cheap, but it's just frozen food reheated. It's not a real restaurant. It's just they have like cheap hot dogs and stuff like that. They have I think it used to be like 10 kroner. That's $1.50, $2. So it's kind of like that famous store you have where they have $1 hot dogs. They used to have that, but they don't. I don't know if they. It's just they're boring, and they boil all their stuff in Sweden. I don't think they own a frying pan in all of Sweden.
Is it like going to Costco to get food? Is that what it is like?
If I go to Costco, I'll tell you, Jamie. I don't go fancy places.
I've never been. People are always like, the Costco pizza or Costco hot dogs. I'm like, why?
I don't know.
But maybe one day. They just put one out by me, so it's close by.
But if you just need to have them deliver.
Apparently, you got to go to the little cafeteria.
Ever had ham balls? They're sweet. No. Never, ever heard about that. Jamie, I woke up at 4:30 this morning and thought, should I do a baker by night? Then I woke up at 8 o'clock and said, nope, probably shouldn't.
Yeah, get your rest.
Yeah, I think I needed it. I don't know. I was at the masseuse today, and she said, oh, have you had trouble walking? I said, no, I've been great. I hit my highest lift in a year the other day. She said, you did what? I said, yeah, I had a really good 400 kilo. I did it twice. I said, but both your hips are seized up, and you have a, what do you call it when your back? They just call it seized. In Denmark, we call it having a hold in the back. But when you are, you can't move. I said, it
Like
must be,
throw
you
your
must be in
back
so
out,
much
yeah.
pain. I said, I feel fine. Sometimes it's great to have nerve damage. Probably not good because you're tearing away on all your muscles, but
Yeah.
I was feeling great. And then she
Vala
started
says
touching me,
old.
and then I didn't feel that great after that. Apparently something about the things that connects to the top of your hips was really, really annoyed. And then she
That
started
happens to a
pushing me
lot of
it.
people.
Yeah,
So,
but
and I know you have like issues already, so that's probably even 10 times worse for you.
at one point she said, can you feel this? I said, yeah, I can feel that. Can you feel I'm moving this? And it just felt like she was moving a ping pong ball under the skin. I thought, oh, that's probably not good. That was Jamie's words. She just put
Seen
that in
that.
private chat.
Whatever. I have never called you fat. I never will.
Oh, you've never been that nice to me. We're going to do a lot of walking on Saturday, so I hope you wear sensible footwear. Don't
I'm
bring your
not
Crocs.
that girl. Don't get me. Yeah. I can't stand it when people know they're going to be like out and about and they're like wearing ridiculous shoes. Nope,
Pernille's
I'm
going to
a-
wear clogs because that's Swedish footwear.
No, I like tennis shoes actually, and a lot of my tennis shoes are like neon colored. I just love bright, crazy tennis shoes, so I have all kinds. I'll bring a couple pair again, I think.
Well, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know if anyone else is showing up, but we're gonna hear Penilla because, as she always say, when I walk in my clocks, clippity cloppity, I sound like mini horse. That's her exact sound because of her Swedish accent. Yeah, you could roll me around in a wheelchair. I would enjoy that. No, it's gonna be fine. That's the good thing about our big cities not being that big. We can walk around and see a lot of it, or we can just say, "What do you want to see?" I want to see a castle. Okay, let's go see a castle.
I want to see all the castles, and then I have to see the Little Mermaids. That's all I
Yeah,
know so far.
I can't even remember where the Little Mermaid is, but I'll find it. I think it's somewhere near the king's castle. I'm not sure. Isn't it? Yeah, I think if you go down and to the left.
I have no
Not
idea.
sure. I don't go there. I think I've been there once in my life, and like everyone else, I was disappointed. And there's always like 1,000 Chinese tourists out there. So
Why?
because Hans Christian
Is it really?
Hans Christian Andersen is the second most translated children book after the Brothers Grimm.
Oh, I was wondering why they like that's a hot spot for them.
Marissa, thank you for suffering Monday so we can have fun with you the rest of the week. She
Yeah,
stacked all her meetings in one day, so she
she's
can
so sweet.
take over Friday. But I don't know. You're probably gonna need a little nap after all your traveling, so I can bring my laptop and just join them for a bit before we go out to eat.
Who knows? I don't even know how I'm gonna feel. It's gonna be interesting.
You're gonna feel kind of like you've been run over, but what time do you leave? 7 or something like
Like
that?
6:30 my time, and then I'm supposed to be there, what, like 11 o'clock the next day your time? But I mean, obviously that's with the time shift.
Do you? Is it direct?
No, it's to Detroit to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Copenhagen.
How long are you gonna stay in Schiphol?
I think it's like an hour 45 layover.
Oh, that's not that bad.
No.
I had 6 hours in London the last time. That was
Oh, really?
quite hard. Arrived in London at 6 and I had to fly out at 12. And you can't sit and sleep or anything really in those shitty seats, so you're just walking around to try and keep awake.
Yeah. I'll just want lots of coffee and I think I'll be okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
a power nap.
yeah. Take some you have all of that sleeping aid you can buy in America over the counter. Take some of that and get a few hours on the way over that, and then it's not that bad.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the longest I've ever sat on a plane is like 4 hours, and that was at about the 4 hour mark. I was so stiff. So we'll
Yeah,
see how it goes.
I don't know. I've started traveling with travel socks that put the pressure on your calves. I feel like that kind of helps.
Oh,
You don't feel as busted in the legs after. Hey, Ralphie, you
hey,
need a pic
Ralphie.
with Iris, Jamie, and Penilla with the Little Mermaid. Yeah, I'm gonna force them to crawl out and stand on the rock next to her. It's illegal, but I'll force them to do it, and then I'm gonna call the police. Yeah, some compression, not as tight as the compression socks I use when I do leg day, but travel socks. I the last time I was in the US, I used them, and I felt like it kind of helped when you put them on. So, oh, and by the way, all my plans about not moving, flying to the US and doing Meetup, I just couldn't swing it in any way financially that made sense. So I won't be doing that. I will have to try and do and maybe see if I can fit in another trip, because every time I tried to put on extra days, it just became insanely expensive. So expensive that it was actually cheaper to fly to like Newark or somewhere like that to do a meetup. So plans change again, sadly. So now I'll only be in Tennessee from Monday to Sunday. So that's where the meetup has to happen this time. But I need to get YouTube rich instead of YouTube money, so I can do 2 meetups a year.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, but it was just
It's
I was
expensive.
looking at it. If I was flying over Friday, it'll be at least 12,000. And then I went in and I looked. If I flew Monday and back Sunday, I could do it for 7. That's that's a big shift, because that's 2.5 months income from my YouTube channel, or 3.5 months income. So just to make
Yeah.
everything a little more fun.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But now I am getting over there, and Valhalla has promised me if I don't rent a car, he will pick me up. Maybe he'll play Tay-Tay for me again.
Oh,
Yeah, but I'm flying premium economy, and I'm because I don't want to sit in those cramped seats like last time I've traveled. The last time I traveled was 27 hours one way and 26 hours the other way. So I would rather pay that extra and have a little more room to sit and sleep in.
mhm.
So and it's Danish money, so it's 1,200 or $1,600. So that's a lot. Oh, that's not nice. I think maybe some people didn't unsub from you. Maybe YouTube removed you because I was stuck at 13,200 for months. Every time I had a little spike, it'll go away the next day. No matter, there was no really reason for it. It was just, hey, I got close to 13.3. And then the next day I was back down to 13,250. And yeah, Jamie knows I complained a lot about it.
I mean, it's frustrating. I can understand.
Yeah, especially when you hit that 13.3. I like round numbers. Not that it matters, because
Mhm.
sometimes you get the big numbers, sometimes you get the small numbers, but it's just it's an accomplishment that you put into your brain and say, "Ah, I did it. I'm at 13.5 now, Jamie."
I just saw that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, that's really not, but that's nice. But it's just a YouTube is a fickle mistress. Sometimes she giveth, sometimes she taketh away. Most of the time she taketh away. So but we don't need to complain about that, because we are lucky that we even have people who want to watch us. Gotta find a flight with a long layover somewhere you want to meet and greet people. No, because then you'll have to leave the airport, get back into, go through security. That's way too much hassle. I just need to. I need to make twice as much money. Then I can do 2 trips a year. Scale back on the giveaways and stuff like that, so I have more traveling money. And then I have to do something when I'm traveling, because I don't make content. I don't make. That's the worst part of it as well. That I'm so bad at doing. I'm not good. The expert, he just films everything and talks to people while he's walking, and I hate it, because, as you can tell, I'm very shy, and I hate that anyone would know that I'm an influencer or something, whatever it is.
Oh,
So
God, I hate that term, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but so I'm gonna do it when I pick you up in the airport. I'm gonna, hey, look who's here!
Oh
Everyone,
my
say
God.
hey to Jamie.
I will karate chop it out of your hand.
I'm gonna treat you like Dave did. First time I met Dave, I recognized Dave because I saw a camera come walking. I thought, yeah, that's Dave. There wasn't let's just say hello to each other. No, here's a camera.
No, just immediately. No, that would. I told you I would hate that. I'll hate every second of it. I will run away if I saw you.
Well, you can film and then you can do a voice over after in. Well, I removed all of my editing software because it was too complicated for me. I never influenced you. I influenced you to learn Danish and come to Denmark. No, that was because I wanted to meet Pernilla. Yeah, I would go to Denmark to meet a Swede as well. Hey, Lefty. Did you see Lefty had a 4-hour show this morning?
Yay! Does everything in the middle of the night, so I can't watch him.
No, he's on screen, so I can't watch him. Yeah, I can film Jamie running away.
Yeah.
You'll have the big sign for Irish. Yeah, we need to stand there with the sign saying "Congratulations on the pregnancy."
For Iris?
Just to make her, and then film it. So it works. I've seen it in a lot of videos, Jamie. It works really well. It gives you a lot of views. Yes, I did get my flight booked, but I'm not gonna be able to make the extra meetup. I'll only be in Tennessee from. I'll arrive at like 10:30 or something at night, and then I'm flying home on Sunday. So I'm actually in the U.S. the same amount of days like last year, but I'll just be coming one day earlier so I get some sleep before we have to do the meetups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you should do. Write a sign that says, "Welcome home from prison, Iris."
It wasn't Sandy Toksvig. She speaks really bad Danish. Yeah, welcome home from prison, Mom. Andrea is always super interesting, and she is very, very, very knowledgeable about everything. She was a very interesting guest. I had her on with Ronkel. It was I like both of them. They have humor. They are smart people, and that's what you want in a guest. You want those.
Morning. Please be seated.
Yeah.
Your husband is the smart one.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, we need a
All
sign
right,
that
we'll
says
go ahead
Taco
and go
Bell
on the
5 stars.
record.
5 stars.
5 stars. Yeah.
We had some brief discussion off the record regarding this.
No, I was watching it and thought, is it dead? And it's only Farron sitting in there talking about her boobs. It was weird waking up to that.
Schedule, and I believe the plan this morning, Ms. Thompson, is to begin with Mr. Safrick, and I see that he is on Zoom. Are you able to hear me this morning, sir?
I can, Your Honor, yes.
All right, and we can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect.
Ms. Thompson.
It was 4:30, and I was thinking, should I make my own stream? And then I saw you were on, and then I thought, I'll just leave him on while I go pee, and then set up my stream. And then I went back and woke up at 8 o'clock. So I was one of your sleeper viewers.
Was there anything we needed to address before beginning with the witness?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
Okay, let's see if I can find my camera, and I'll swear the witness in here. 1 second. Too many screens to keep track of here.
Yep.
All right, good morning. If you'd raise your hand, sir, I'll swear you in. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be true and correct?
I do.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Safrick, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes. Hold on one second. Let me just turn this up a little bit. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Safrick. Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
Sure. My name is Mark Safrick. I am the president of Forensic Behavioral Services.
And what do you do for a living as the president of that company?
I conduct complex assessments of death investigations, death cases for interested parties to help them understand what happened, how those events within the case unfolded, and possibly sometimes why they occurred.
Are you familiar with the term equivocal death evaluation, Mr. Safrick?
Yes.
Can you tell?
Recording in progress.
Can you tell the court, Mr. Safrick, what an equivocal death evaluation is?
Sure. An equivocal death evaluation is an investigation where the manner of death, not necessarily the cause of death, but the manner of death is in dispute or in question, or where there are several possible scenarios that could explain the death.
And I want to get back to that concept with you, Mr. Safrick, but for starters, did you work in law enforcement prior to starting your company?
I did.
And can you tell us in general terms what your law enforcement career consisted of?
Sure. I started in 1977 in California with a local law enforcement city police agency. I started in patrol. I worked about 3.5 years in patrol and then promoted into detectives, started in property crimes, and finished out my time there in violent crime investigation. Subsequent to that, I applied to the FBI. I got into the FBI in 1984. I served in various field offices. I served 23 years in the FBI, the last 12 plus years in the behavioral analysis unit.
In total, how long was your law enforcement career?
30 years.
And in total, how many of those years were with the FBI?
23.
And you mentioned that you worked with the behavioral analysis unit in the FBI. Can you tell me what you did in that unit?
Sure. So I worked there were 3 units. We had a child crimes unit, we had a threat assessment terrorism unit, and we had an adult crimes unit. So I was assigned to the adult crimes unit. I was responsible for, it's a relatively small unit. We had 8 criminal.
He does complex death assessments.
Behavioral analysts. I was responsible for the 6 western states of the country, for all cases that came in from law enforcement agencies from those locations. Most of the cases that I worked on were homicide cases, multicide, so serial murder, mass murder, spree murder, sexual homicide cases, and serial sexual assaults, all related to adults.
I'm going to get the context.
Did part of your work in that unit involve analyzing crime scenes?
Essentially, everything, despite the services that we offered, everything within the unit requires a detailed analysis of the crime scene. In whatever case it is and whatever we're being asked to provide to the requesting law enforcement agency. So it all comes down to conducting a detailed analysis of the scene, the antecedent behavior, the behavior during the scene, evaluating forensic evidence, physical evidence, and integrating all of that information together to understand the totality of the events that are occurring both in sequence and in time.
You told us earlier about this concept of equivocal death evaluations. Did you perform those evaluations while you were with the FBI?
I did.
And did you have experience at the FBI investigating cases where investigators initially believed the case was a homicide, but the case turned out to be something else?
Yes.
Have you published in the area of death investigations?
Yes, I've published, I have a book on spree murders for police investigations. I have numerous peer-reviewed international journal articles on various aspects of death analysis and investigation.
Have you trained law enforcement officers on the topic of death investigations?
Yes.
Can you tell us briefly about your experience training other officers on this subject?
So I regularly do presentations for law enforcement groups and other groups for forensic nurses, victim advocates. I've presented to judges, to prosecutors, to defense attorneys, homicide investigators, violent crime investigators around the U.S. and throughout the world. I would say, conservatively, I would say I've presented to over 20,000 law enforcement professionals.
Are you the member of any professional organizations?
Yes, there's a number of them that I have listed in my CV. American Academy of Forensic Sciences, the VDOC Society, it's a cold case society. Off the top of my head, I have a list that I just don't recall them now.
In your consulting career since you left the FBI, what kinds of clients have you consulted for?
Well, since I left the FBI, most of the clients are, I would say, attorneys, civil attorneys. So the types of cases that I work on typically involve some type of violent crime. But I have done cases for prosecutors, for defense attorneys, and even for private parties. Sometimes family members will retain me to examine a case. And prosecutors, defense attorneys, and then in civil cases, both the plaintiff and the defense.
Do you have clients for whom you've consulted where the client ended up not using the opinions that you provided to them?
Yes, that occurred both in the FBI when we consulted with law enforcement agencies, and also civilly. The cases that I've done in the nearly 18 years since I've been retired from the FBI, there will always be cases where the analysis doesn't line up with what the attorneys are looking for, and then they don't end up using me.
I want to come back to this topic of equivocal death evaluation and crime scene analysis. And for starters, Mr. Safrick, you are not a medical doctor, is that right?
That's correct.
In reaching your opinions about crime scene analysis and case investigation, do you rely on medical diagnoses that are reached by medical professionals in those cases?
I do.
And do you also rely on objective evidence that's gathered by law enforcement investigators and others related to a case?
Of course.
Mr. Safrick, are you here today to offer any opinions on whether any particular person related to the investigation into Ms. Mullis's death is telling the truth?
No.
Are you here today to offer any medical opinions?
No.
And the opinions that you're going to offer today, are those opinions that you hold to a reasonable degree of certainty?
They are.
You talked about this concept of equivocal death evaluation. How does an equivocal death evaluation differ from another type of homicide investigation?
So most of the cases that I've worked on, both in my FBI career and subsequently, typically involve a violent crime, oftentimes a homicide. So the advantage when you are working a case like that is that you know at the outset that the manner of death is homicide. So that's never in question. When you're working an equivocal death case, they actually are much more difficult to work because when you get the case, the manner of death is either in dispute or it's unknown. It could be undetermined, which is one of the 5 evaluations that you can have in the United States for manner of death. So the way that you approach an equivocal death is different than you would approach, say, a homicide case. Here you have to look at all of the various attributes of the case in terms of what is consistent and what's inconsistent with a particular manner of death. Now, I would say that in most of the equivocal death cases that I have worked, when you look at the 4 manners of death, which would be natural, accident, suicide, and homicide, in most of the cases, you can eliminate usually 1 or 2 of the 4. So you're usually left with 2 manners of death that you have to consider. So it's a more complex type of investigation because you have to consider various avenues of consistency and inconsistency with the forensic evidence, the physical evidence, and the behavioral actions that have occurred at the scene, and how all of those translate both sequentially and in a time order or temporally.
Mr. Safrick, did you conduct an equivocal death evaluation into Ms. Mullis's death?
I did.
And did you review evidence related to the investigation into her death as part of your evaluation?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us in general terms what you reviewed?
So, what is important in literally any type of investigation is the initial police investigation. So that would be any investigation they did, any evidence that was collected, any testing of that evidence. In a death case, it would be the autopsy protocol, photographs and diagrams from the scene, any interviews of witnesses, the assessment of the scene itself. That is all the critical information. Typically, in those types of investigations, what occurs weeks or months later oftentimes isn't really relevant to what I'm doing, because I'm doing a crime scene analysis. So it's everything that's attendant to the initial scene, which is typically frozen by police on their arrival.
And I do want to start talking, I want to start by asking you some questions about the scene that you just referenced. Based on your evaluation that you conducted in this case, did you develop opinions about the scene of Ms. Mullis's death?
Yes.
And are you aware that in this case, prosecutors argued to the jury that the scene of Ms. Mullis's death was staged?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
All right. So when we talk about the concept of the scene in the Mullis investigation, what do you understand to be the scene of where she was injured?
Well, okay, so I would say more broadly, the scene is literally the entire farm area of the Mullis farm. If we're referring just to the injury location, that would be the shed that stands between the house and the hog barns.
Is it your understanding in this case that Ms. Mullis died at the hospital?
Yes.
And why do you consider the scene to be the shed and the Mullis farm in this case?
Well, okay, so I would say I would consider the Mullis farm, or at least certainly the area around the house and the shed and the workshop and the hog barns, as the overall scene area, because there were witnesses and individuals in those locations. I would say that the shed is the location for Miss Mullis's passing, because there's physical evidence in the shed that suggests that. The interviews that were conducted, the information derived from those interviews indicates that, and the police investigation and their theory is that her death took place in the shed.
In your training,
which I think is accurate.
And when you're talking,
her injury took place in the shed.
In your training and experience, what does it mean for a scene to be staged?
So staging a crime scene is an attempt by the offender of, say, the homicide, because that's typically where you see staged crime scenes, is in homicides, It's an attempt by the offender to misdirect the investigation. And the way that they misdirect the investigation is to introduce either spurious or fake evidence, remove evidence, or create contrived activities or behaviors that that actually didn't occur. And the idea is that the purpose is that they're trying to create a new scene that has a new motive, because that's what they want law enforcement investigators to look at and draw their own conclusion that this is what is actually occurring as opposed to what actually occurred. And so they stage the scene. The reason that staging is, and recognition of staging at a crime scene is important, because because strangers don't need to stage a crime scene. They don't have a relationship dynamic with either the victim or the scene or both. So when you see intentional staging, then it suggests that that the offender has some relationship with the victim or the scene or both of those.
So how is it that law enforcement evaluate whether or not a scene is staged?
Well, that's the point. So the offender, he manipulates the scene, either the forensic evidence or the behavioral evidence or the physical evidence. They manipulate the scene to change it so that when law enforcement comes and looks at the scene, that they're trying to overwhelm what law enforcement's logical conclusion about the scene would be, to make them think it's actually something different. So a new type of case that has a different motive. The problem is that when you are staging a crime scene, all of this activity then is happening after the crime. So it's not occurring in the right sequence or the right time order. And so you get inconsistent forensics, you get inconsistent injuries, you may have blood spatter in a location that doesn't fit the crime. So there are a lot of red flags that are evident in staged crime scenes.
Did you see evidence in this case that the scene of Ms. Mullis's injuries was staged in some way?
No.
And can you explain how you reached that determination?
Well, I would say first off, when you stage a crime scene, the point is that you need law enforcement investigators to come to the scene and look at it. You've changed the scene. You've changed the victim. You've changed evidence. You've created something that is supposed to look different, but you need investigators to see it, because you need for them to draw their own conclusions about the scene. Incorrect conclusions, but that's the whole point. So here you don't even have a scene, and that's the point. So there's no staging that's going on here, because investigators, they only come to the shed at a later time.
So why was there no scene in this case?
I'm sorry?
I said, why is it that there was no scene in this case, as you just mentioned?
Right. So there's no scene because, first of all, Amy Mullis is not deceased, and there's an attempt to render aid to her, both in the shed and then subsequently in the truck, and then subsequently at the roadside location where dispatch advises him to stop the truck and meet law enforcement. There's no scene. The victim is not there. Everything is, suggests that Mr. Mullis was attempting to render aid to his wife in getting her to the hospital. So there's no scene to analyze, not for staging anyway.
In your experience, is an aspect of scene staging sometimes that a person that is staging a scene will generate a situation where someone else will find the victim?
Yes, that's very common, and not even in staged scenes, but in other types of homicide cases where it's called, what we refer to it as third-party discovery. So what they don't want is to discover the victim because then it creates a problem for them because they're not at an arm's length distance. So oftentimes they will have somebody else discover the victim. That could be a neighbor, it could be a coworker, it could be a friend. That puts them at arm's length from both the scene and the victim, and essentially allows them to try to create an alibi.
Well, here you're aware that it was not Mr. Mullis that found Ms. Mullis, is that right?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And
yes.
in your evaluation of this case, did the circumstances of this case fit the third-party discovery dynamic that you just described?
I would say no for two reasons. One, in every third-party discovery, in any case I've ever worked, or any case that I'm aware of from my time in the FBI's behavioral unit, or in my 18 years subsequent to that, I have never seen a third-party discovery where a parent sends a child to make the discovery. It's typically an adult contacting another adult, not a family member, but, you know, as I said, neighbor, friend, coworker, somebody that's disconnected personally, in a sense, from the victim. So that's not my experience to have sent. You know, I've never seen you send a minor child to find, you know, the parent. Secondly, it doesn't really work here because there's nobody here at the Mullis farm. This farm is isolated. It's out in the country. There are no houses around it. There were no other people. So it doesn't make any sense to send, you know, if you're trying to do third-party discovery, it doesn't make any sense to send your minor child to make the discovery. For one, there's nobody else around, and two, the time frame is literally minutes. So we're not talking about hours or, you know, or days. We're just talking minutes. So it doesn't it wouldn't serve any purpose in terms of distancing yourself from the scene to send your minor child.
Did you see evidence in this case that Tristan Mullis was interviewed by authorities, you know, soon after the events that brought Ms. Mullis to the hospital?
Yes, he was interviewed within minutes after the event.
Did his availability for interviews influence your conclusion that there's not evidence of third-party staging here?
Yes, partially. It's one of the things that I would say is consistent with it. Because he's a minor, you know, you have to have parental permission to interview a minor. And Todd gave permission immediately for Tristan to accompany law enforcement back to the house to show them and tell them what he saw, what he did, you know, what he found. And so that's inconsistent, really, because if you're the offender, you don't want a third party to be making statements that might, you know, affect your credibility or, you know, whatever you've told law enforcement.
And did you see evidence in this case of Mr. Mullis interrupting or preventing law enforcement from interviewing Tristan without Mr. Mullis there?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this line of questioning as improper expert opinion testimony because it's a comment on credibility not only of Todd Mullis but also of Tristan Mullis in this case. Credibility is a determination solely for the fact finder, and it is not subject to expert testimony under 570(2), 3, and 4, I believe.
That's not the correct objection. Sorry, I was muted. Because it's not about credibility. It's about, did he keep the kid from helping the police? That has nothing to do with credibility. I think it's a totally cromulent question to ask, especially because this guy's theory is that you wouldn't send a kid and you wouldn't give the police access to the kid. So I don't know why he goes to credibility.
Overruled.
I think I did not get an answer to that question, Your Honor. Is that correct?
I didn't hear an answer. You may.
No,
answer.
yeah, I didn't. Can you just repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I'll have to have the reporter read it back since there was an objection, so we'll give her a chance to do that.
Thank you.
And did you see evidence in this case of Mr. Mullis interrupting or preventing law enforcement from interviewing Tristan without Mr. Mullis there?
No, there were 2 instances where law enforcement asked Mr. Mullis if they could interview Tristan. One of them was immediately after, from the roadside location to accompany Tristan back to the house to explain the whole situation there. And then later on that day, they also asked him again, and he said, sure, go ahead.
Did that permission impact your conclusions here about the scene not being staged?
I think, as I said, I think it's one piece, right? Because clearly, if you don't know what someone's going to say, especially with a minor child, it would be very easy to say, I don't want you to talk to him, or I want him with me, for whatever reason. So I think it's a piece that, lends itself to suggest that he didn't care what Tristan told law enforcement, because it was going to be what Tristan's experience was that morning.
Did you see evidence in your equivocal death evaluation in this case that there was planning involved in some way in someone hypothetically causing Miss Mullis's death?
Right. So, I don't see any staging in this case, and I don't see any planning. If the allegation is that it's staged, I think if it's planned, it would be very, very poorly planned for several reasons. One, the weapon is really a terrible weapon. Can it inflict fatal injuries? Yes. But is it a good weapon to use? No. If you're planning this, you don't want your children around. You don't want to be in a position where you literally would have to escape from your son to commit this. And also, you have 2 other minor children in the house, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. You have no control over them. You don't know where they're going to be, if they're going to come outside, if they're going to go to the shed. That they played in the shed. So it would be extremely risky. So to do that with your minor children would be, problematic. Farm accidents are very prevalent. So if you're going to plan this, if you've spent time to think about this, then there are lots of other ways that this could have occurred that didn't involve your minor children and didn't involve a very odd type of weapon, like a corn rake. And it would have given you the privacy to interact with Amy at another location, somewhere off the farm property. But I just didn't see any evidence of planning, because I don't think there's no staging here. And if this is planned, it's extremely poorly planned.
Thank you, Crispy Bacon, for the 5 corner kisses. You are
Aw.
very, very nice. I don't know, is that a good argument? If he killed her, he was stupid because he didn't plan it and stage it correctly, and he used a bad weapon. I don't know if I'll go into that part of it.
I mean,
well, he could just have pew-pewed her in the face. That would be easier.
well, I don't know. It goes to show for me, like, kind of how, I don't know, these cops had such tunnel vision. And it's just when you're looking at everything as a whole, yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah,
And
but-
that was their argument too, that he staged this and planned this to a T, and like that was their whole argument. Like,
Yeah,
in
but
the
did
first
they
trial.
get that out when we had the cop on the scene? Because I can't remember the cop testifying about the staging of the crime scene, and that's the big problem in this case. Is this guy's good? I like the biomechanical engineers. The rest of them have been horrible witnesses.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot from the prosecutor. I mean, I don't know if you remember much of the
Yeah,
cops saying that specifically, but it was definitely her argument.
Yeah, but it didn't land because she asked the same question 45,000 times in different ways. But I like this guy where he's going, and I hope we get some visuals.
Yeah, he's very well spoken.
Yeah, slow, calm, and easy to understand. As I said yesterday, you need good communicators as experts. You don't need the smartest people. You need the ones who are able to talk to the dumbest people. And I even think Lefty understands this one.
Did the fact that Ms. Mullis passed away at the hospital in this case, is that a fact that you took into account in evaluating whether or not there was planning associated with her death?
Yes, because the idea in a staged crime scene, one, is that the victim is deceased, because you're going to be manipulating the scene, manipulating the victim. So the victim has to be deceased, because if they're not deceased, then there's a possibility they can move away, get help, render the aid to themselves. It becomes very problematic. So the fact that she's not deceased, again, in terms of planning, if this was the plan to kill her, then that didn't succeed.
If Ms. Mullis was, if there was evidence in this case that Ms. Mullis was the person who suggested the family work in the barn the day of her injuries, would that contribute to your analysis of whether or not Ms. Mullis's death was planned in some way?
Yes, I mean, it affects it because because of her medical procedure, she had been unsteady, dizzy. She'd been resting at the house for several days. So it was, I believe, only on that morning when she informed Todd that she just couldn't sit in the house anymore and was going to come out and try to help in the barn. So again, how would you know this? You really wouldn't know it. So it goes against planning. Additionally, in terms of the planning, if you're trying to stage this, so then you have to know where the corn rake is, right? You have to be able to tell police, yeah, I saw the corn rake there yesterday. I was in the shed yesterday. I saw the corn rake. It was right here. So because it has to be, the scenario would have to make sense, right? You're trying to make it make sense to the police. So yes, you're going to tell the investigators, yes, the corn rake was in the shed. I saw it in the shed. This is where I saw it, right? But that's not what you have here. Instead, when they asked Todd where the corn rake was, he's like, I don't know. I hadn't seen it for 2 weeks. Last time I saw it weeks ago, I'd set it against the wall, but I don't know where it was. So that doesn't make any sense if you're trying to stage a crime scene, right? You're trying to make law enforcement believe that this is, an accident, right? That's what you're trying. So you need to have the corn rake there, to confirm that for them, but it's not. And I don't think Todd knew until that morning that Amy was planning on coming out to the hog barns.
Is the topic of victimology relevant to equivocal death evaluations?
Yes, victimology is relevant to any type of crime analysis because understanding the individual whose life is taken or who dies, is really important to understand their background, and what effect that has on risk level for them. So understanding that background, all aspects of that background from their various types of histories, could be criminal or psychological or financial, their relationship dynamics with friends, coworkers, family members, all that information is important to understand, who is Amy Mullis and, what's that dynamic relationship between her, Todd, other people in her life.
Is that what that term victimology means, what you just described?
Yes, right. And it also, especially when you're talking about risk, you're trying to assess at what level of risk is she to become the victim of a violent crime. But on the flip side, you're also, that also informs the level of risk that an offender is willing to take to commit the crime. So if you have a very low risk victim, which I would say Amy is, not only because of her lifestyle, but simply because she lives in a very isolated location that's difficult to really find and get access to her. But also, sorry, lost my train of thought. Also because, the risk would be very high for an offender to access her there. So risk is a balance between the victim and the willingness for the offender to take on, more risk. And the more risk an offender is willing to take, then the more important it is for them to, commit whatever act they're, preparing to commit.
Well, in considering victimology and in considering risk, in general, in conducting these type of equivocal death evaluations, do you consider the concept of infidelity in making that analysis?
Sure, if that exists, if it's relevant. So there are lots of different components to victimology, and their relationship dynamics the relationship dynamics in her relationships would be important. So if it's uncovered that there's marital infidelity, certainly that would be important to understand.
Well, in conducting this equivocal death evaluation, did you consider the issue of infidelity in the Mullis marriage in reaching your conclusions?
Sure, absolutely.
And how did that fit into your analysis?
Well, so once I was aware of it, then I have to put it in context, right? So everything that's done in my type of analysis is always within context. It's always within the totality of the circumstances. It's never a single piece of evidence that, is pulled out and assigned a value. It only has meaning within the context of everything you're looking at. So when I became aware that she had this affair with Mr. Frazier, then I wanted to take that into consideration. What do I know about that? Who knows about that? Did Todd know about that? What's that dynamic? What is that dynamic like? So of course, it's a very important piece.
And did you draw any conclusions about how, if at all, infidelity would have played a role in the victimology in this case?
So one thing I really wanted to understand is, was Todd aware of it? Now, clearly there had been a past infidelity that he was aware of. But in this current one, based on the emails and the texts between Amy, Jerry Frazier, Mr. Frazier's wife, several of her friends whom she confided this infidelity to, there's nothing that I was able to see that led me to believe that Todd was aware of the infidelity. I mean, Amy said he wasn't. Jerry said he wasn't. In fact, there was questioning by Todd in, I believe it was July of 2018, where he had seen a number of texts between Amy and Jerry, and asked Jerry about them, or I think asked Jerry about them, and was given what appeared to be a reasonable explanation for it, and then spoke to Amy, and to the extent that I think he felt badly that he had thought there could be something going on, and actually apologized to Jerry and to Jerry's wife. And in texts between Jerry and Amy, they were very confident that Todd was not aware of the affair.
Sneaky, sneaky.
In considering the issue of victimology, in assessing risk factors as you've described, do you as an investigator think through the dynamic of someone reporting events differently to different people?
Sure, absolutely.
And did you consider that dynamic in this case?
Of course.
And what, if any, oh, go ahead, Mr. Safrick.
So certainly, I mean, all of us have different relationship dynamics with people. We have our public lives, we have our private lives, and some people have a secret life. But it depends on the relationship dynamic with your friends. So some of your friends are more distant; they're almost more like acquaintances, and other friends are people you see all the time, and then other friends are like really close friends. That could be the same for coworkers. So when the stories and the conversations that you have with different people in your life basically reflect the level of comfort you have with them, what you will tell them. And so you see, I mean, when you look at the conversations that she has with several of her friends and with Jerry, you can see the difference in the conversations, and that I think would be expected.
Is it?
Do you need power? Yeah. There's a power strip right in front of you.
They didn't plug in the computer. Even when it's going good, they're doing some amateur hour stuff. I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
It's just why didn't you plug in your computer? You know you're sitting there using it all the time.
I did get an answer to the last question, right? I don't need it read back. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Did you see evidence in your evaluation, Mr. Safrick, that there were communications between Ms. Mullis and Jerry Frazier where Ms. Mullis was critical of Todd Mullis?
Yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you draw from those communications in terms of Ms. Mullis's victimology?
I didn't think that there was anything wrong with those. You know, she has the secret affair.
He didn't find out till after. He saw some text messages at some point where he said, and then he contacted the wife of the guy she had the affair with, and she said, no, everything's fine at our end. There's nothing going on. And he said, well, okay, nothing's going on. Okay, I'll believe that. And then it came out after she had passed away that she was having an affair.
Yeah, because the
Unbeknownst
guy,
to them.
he asked the guy and his wife, and they both were like, nah. And even Amy said no. And so he literally just, he believed them, and he just went on about his business.
Yeah, so nothing came out at that time. Yes, Todd is the only one that prison made look better. He's gotten a better diet and more exercise, it looks like.
Well, even his first trial, he lost a ton of weight. I mean, I'm sure because of the stress of being in jail. But yeah.
And Mr. Meetup, I totally agree. As I've always said, if you want to bang someone else, just do it. You can call me after. I'll make sure everything is packed up when you leave. It's no problem. It just means that it's you and I are done. So get out of here. It's that easy. Because I hate that it was an accident. No, you wanted to do it. You can go do it again, but you can't sleep here anymore. And it's not that hard. Be a grown up. But allegedly, she had 3 affairs, and he only knew about the first one. He didn't know about the cop either, right?
Yeah, he didn't know about anybody except the first one that happened like 5 years prior or something like that.
Yeah, they had the first one 5 years prior, and then she hooked up with a cop later, and then she hooked up with someone who worked at the farm or helped at the farm or something like that. Yeah. So she was a serial banger around her. Oh, race crochet. Doesn't look good.
Going on with Mr. Frazier. She's violating her marital vows. She's, there's probably some level of fantasy, that's going on here. So I think based on the conversation she was having with Jerry, at some point, she feels badly and she's looking for someone to sort of buoy her up, right? Support her. Almost, I don't want to say like a victim mentality, but certainly, that kind of, where it's, she's looking for sympathy. She's looking for someone to, provide support for her, right? To make her feel good. I think those kinds of texts with Jerry, if you're commenting on your relationship with Todd, I think it, makes sense, when you're talking to somebody who's, your secret lover. I didn't see anything that, that cause me any kind of, concern.
Did you see any differences in the communication between information that Ms. Mullis was conveying to Mr. Frazier and information that she was conveying to Todd?
Sure. I mean, I think she's married to Todd. She has children with Todd, right? They have a business together. So they're
Jamie, you wrote this yesterday, and I needed to ask you, but I didn't. One of the Google searches was something about DNA to prove father of the child.
Yeah.
Something.
It was how to get DNA. I wrote it in the thing exactly how he said it. And I was like, why is this such a big deal? Because they're making such a big deal about it.
Well, because that would imply that he knew that his wife probably banged around while the kids were made.
Well, that was the whole thing, is like he was just throwing out all these searches, and they couldn't determine who did what, because obviously the mixed in with all of that was the stuff I was talking about too, was wedding dress searches and like wedding boutiques. And the cop just kept saying, yeah, but it was his account, so it had to be him.
Yeah, every device in my house is on my account, and sometimes when I have my nephews over, they might borrow my my tablet to watch a movie or something. But there was just something about the way, maybe I misread it. I thought it was more like how to hide a DNA test.
Well, it said how to something about not telling the father or something. So in my eyes, it kind of sounded like she was.
Yeah, I have to go back and find it now, because it stuck in my mind when you said it, and then I was in bed and about to sleep. So
I figured he obviously had. I feel like he always probably had suspicions, but once those people were saying no, that's nothing's going on, he probably was like, okay, I'll believe them. But I'm sure he still had suspicions, because obviously some of the searches were signs of a cheating woman, and like, what was the other one that they hindered on big time was what people did to cheating women in ancient times or something like that, because they were saying that he wanted to know how they used to off the women that cheated back in the day, and that was how he was going to do it this time around. It was so goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at it, because it
There
was
was
when
wedding dress searches and boutiques, and he's like, yeah, it was him. The iPads was logged into his goggle. Because there was searches about signs of a cheating woman, what happens to cheating women in ancient times, signs of a heat stroke, body organs.
Yeah.
These are some of the searches they used to show his plan this. How to do a DNA test without the father knowing is another search. That's the one. How to do a DNA test without the father knowing.
That was one of the searches that they brought up big time.
Yeah, and you wouldn't search that if you were the father trying to figure out if you were the father of the kid.
Yeah.
Then you would search how to make sure that the mom didn't find out.
Yeah, because like the mom has to do the DNA test.
Yeah, if the father is not to find out, then it must be the mom who's doing the DNA test. But if you are implying that he is searching a DNA test, how to do a DNA test without him finding out, that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was just a few of the ones that got brought up. And the Google expert just kept saying, well, it was under his account, his Google account. It was logged in under his Google account. So, I mean, it had to be him. Because apparently everybody switches their Google account when they go and search their own stuff. No, they don't.
No, you just log into the computer.
Yeah, if mine's logged in already, then anybody who comes over here can use it. And it'll look like I did it, but it could be anybody. And that's what didn't get like put out there very well. And I didn't like that at all. But those are the searches that they were bringing up to show that he was planning this.
Yeah.
And the whole organs, body organs, signs of a heat stroke, like stuff like that. They even brought up, which I thought was good, that it happened the day before her surgery. So she could have been looking that stuff up like before her surgery, because she was about to have it. So anyways.
that's yeah. Those I hope, but we didn't get into those searches with the Google guy. I think that's a
No,
big
it
mistake.
was rough. It was rough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That Google guy was a big waste because they made it too easy for the state to object and get stuff thrown out.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully the judge kind of pandered through it, but like I could see how
The
they just
judge only looks at what's been presented, so all these Google searches doesn't exist.
no, but I mean, like, you know, because I felt like they objected a lot to kind of muddy his testimony, and like
But
I could see
they
with
never
a
talked about
jury.
this. They never talked about what was the searches about. They only talked about he couldn't have searched it because he was in a tractor.
Yeah, they needed to really get into some of this stuff. That was what that well, that report he had, like I can't remember. See, it was so muddied. But like, remember he had that poor report with the DVR stuff because they talked about the DVR stuff very briefly, which is weird. But and the searches, like, why didn't they bring some of those up? Because
But they said the 11
times.
pages of something was allowed in. I think that was, but it was all the 39 pages of text messages that was clipped out of something else. But I think the 11 pages of Google searches was allowed in, but you need to highlight what does she need to go back and pay special attention to. And I
Yeah.
think how to hide a DNA test from the father is very, in my way, not pointing a finger at this guy.
Yeah, it's showing
That sounds
the
more
opposite.
like a cheating hoe who are looking at her third son and thinking, he doesn't quite look like my husband. Should I be worried that it's John down the road that might be the father? That's
Well, that's the
just
whole
what
thing.
I get from that one.
Yeah, because they weren't seemingly together like that long, I think. Like they were only together like 4 months, I think, when they got married is what I found out.
4 months.
Yeah, and they got married.
Remember that case we had one of the days with that guy who moved in with that chick with 3 kids and 4 different baby daddies and who wanted to leave the day after. That was guys, stop thinking with the little head.
Some of the texts that she's sending Todd are very playful, loving, discussing things that I think any normal couple would be discussing, things happening on the farm, breakfast, just sort of innocuous kinds of conversations. She did say that she loved him, but of course, she's got the secret side of her. So obviously she's not going to tell Todd about that. But it doesn't mean that she doesn't care about Todd. And I mean, that's the sense I got in reading a number of messages. And you can't just read one. You have to put them in context. You have to read a lot of those, and a lot of those messages to her friends, and evaluate, what is that relationship? What is she comfortable telling these different people?
And Your Honor, again, I'm going to object on well beyond the scope of expert testimony. We're just commenting on text messages and things that are well within common sense and reason, and that is not subject as a reliable expert opinion under 5702 and 03, and therefore should be excluded under even 403B.
I mean, I do think we're getting pretty far afield here, Ms. Thompson. If you want to try to tie this back in, that's okay, but I'm not sure what your next question is.
I mean, I'm moving forward, Your Honor. I would just say that there was some testimony from Mr. Firehelm that he personally, in his analysis of the case, believed that there were, and I don't remember his exact words from yesterday, but that basically his own evaluation of the marriage was different than what Mr. Safrick's describing. And one of the ineffective assistance of counsel claims that Mr. Mullis has is that his counsel didn't consult with someone who could have provided context. So this is relevant to Mr. Mullis's ineffective assistance of counsel claim. I agree that, and it's not this witness's intention or our intention to argue that this witness can provide, veracity about these issues, but more context for counsel to have evaluated the issues here and how to present them for Mr. Mullis.
Your Honor, if I may be heard.
You may.
Well, that's certainly not what he authored the report for, to comment on Mr. Firehelm's testimony. He makes direct credibility determinations, and he coins it under a term victimology. There's at least 2 cases which have excluded his analysis, specifically on this point, and reversed for new trials as it being inadmissible in the first place, and therefore unreliable. I'm happy to provide those citations now. They're from the Illinois Supreme Court, where they find the entirety of this testimony in line of questioning to be inadmissible, as did the New Jersey court that they relied on too, because it's the equivalent of testimony from a 13th juror to parrot in a theory of a case. That is improper testimony testimony, and we would vehemently object under the expert testimony provisions in 403.
Yeah. And certainly a little different to have the testimony of trial counsel's analysis of the case and attempting to get the testimony in this way through an expert. So again, if you can have him explain how he's qualified as an expert to talk to me about this specific type of testimony in a way that isn't vouching or credibility, which is my domain, I guess we can try to go there. But the way this direction is, or the way the testimony is going, seems to be down that path at the moment. So let's maybe redirect and get back into something that I think is his domain with these investigations, or the way in which he handles them, please.
Understood, Your Honor. And we can take up the issue of that case law because we disagree with what it says, but I understand the court's ruling, and I'll move on to a different topic.
Thank you.
Mr. Safrick, are you familiar with the concept of confirmation bias?
Yes.
And can you tell us in brief terms what that is?
Well, I would say in reference to like a criminal case, the investigators are more likely to search for and recognize what confirms their bias or their theory and ignore or not consider.
She's the one who's mentoring all these new kids. She's doing better today than she did with the police officer. I really didn't like the way she handled day one. I thought she was all over the place and just kept asking the same question new ways and getting the same answer. But she's doing better today, and I think they have had a good prep session before this.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence to the contrary.
Did you see evidence of confirmation bias in the investigation into Ms. Mullis's death?
I'm going to object again, Your Honor. This is psychological evidence, and it's been kept out before because they do not he has no experience as a psychologist. He has no medical experience as a psychiatrist. What is the point of this testimony? Again, under our reading of the case law, courts have kept out the very same thing and found it to be improper, and we would object on those grounds as before. It's the same grounds as before.
Did you wish to respond to this, Ms. Thompson?
Well, the case law that the primary case in Illinois in which a court determined Mr. Safrick's opinions were not relevant actually dealt with his assessment of a crime scene. If the state is referencing People versus King, we can talk about that case. This is not testimony that's offered to provide, the purpose of this testimony is to talk about what this investigation was and why it is that both Mr. Mullis's own attorneys and investigators focused on incorrect information. And that is within Mr. Safrick's province as an experienced FBI investigator, as an experienced law enforcement officer who evaluates these cases. It's to understand why both Mr. Mullis's own attorneys and the authorities would have, focused on particular issues without looking at others. And that's relevant to understanding why it is that Mr. Mullis didn't receive effective assistance of counsel, and why it is that this investigation got off track, which is one of the claims that Mr. Mullis raises in his petition.
And again, Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Safrick's report doesn't speak to that. The ultimate conclusion as set out on page 56 and 57 is meant for him to speak to whether or not this was an accident or a homicide. Specifically, if we look to his conclusion, he said, quote, "I was asked to review this case to determine if a manner of death other than homicide would provide the most logical explanation for Amy's death," close quote. I believe that's at page 57, Your Honor, possibly 58. And so Mr. Safrick's conclusions certainly aren't being relevant to an ineffective assistance of counsel claim. And again, improper testimony invades on the fact finder's function here.
Ms. Thompson, any further response?
Mr. Safrick has not offered an opinion about the cause of death here, although he certainly has one, as the state alluded to. There's nothing about, and his report does discuss the topic of confirmation bias and how that is relevant here. These opinions are just as relevant for what counsel would have taken into account in choosing whether or not to investigate, choosing whether or not to make certain arguments on Mr. Mullis's behalf. That is exactly the purpose of his report. It's information that counsel could have taken into account. That's exactly what we offered it for in our petition, that counsel failed to get this kind of expert opinion which would have aided in counsel's analysis. There is nothing about Mr. Safrick's report that is inconsistent with presenting it in that way. We have not presented Mr. Safrick's ultimate opinion in this case. That is the province of the court. But these are all the factors that he could have explained to counsel, which would have helped counsel understand what evidence would have been relevant to arguing this case to the jury in Mr. Mullis's case. And I'd say that there's a number of other cases where Mr. Safrick's analysis and opinions have been accepted by courts, and we have a number of those cases we can cite to the court. So the state has pulled out, a couple where courts went the other way, but that's not the Mr. Safric has testified all over the country, and his opinions have been accepted by courts in numerous states.
To the extent that the court understands Mr. Safric to be offering an opinion as to the investigation that was conducted into this matter, and not an opinion or as an expert on confirmation bias specifically, the court will allow the testimony and give it whatever weight it's ultimately due. So the objection is overruled. You may proceed, Ms. Thompson.
I'm sorry, what was my last question? And I apologize because I don't recall. I believe the last question may have been.
Do you see evidence of confirmation bias in the investigation into Ms. Mullis's?
Did you hear that question, Mr. Safric?
Oh, I didn't. No, I did not.
Let me repeat it. Did you, Mr. Safric, see evidence of confirmation bias in the Mullis investigation?
Yes.
And can you explain what evidence you saw of that?
Well, I think the first really important piece here relates to the interviews that were done of Tristan and Todd. It's important to understand that the first three interviews of Todd, well, two of them occurred. The first three occurred on the day, on the 10th. The first three interviews of Tristan, or first two interviews of Tristan, also occurred on the 10th. At no time were those interviews conducted with Todd and Tristan together. They were all conducted independently. In fact, all of the interviews that were conducted, including the ones on the 16th, were conducted independently. So normally in law enforcement, when you have two suspects and that are,
Jamie, are you having a stroke?
No, my iPad's broken, so every time I click something, it'll start typing and doing all its own thing. So I was like, what the heck just happened? I have a cracked screen, so it has a mind of its own.
Jamie has crack on her screen.
Yeah.
suspected in a crime, and law enforcement
He's
arrests
trying to block people
the
too.
first thing that law enforcement does is separate them. Why? Because they don't want them talking and getting their story together. I mean, this is an investigation 101. And that's exactly what happened here. We have these literally 7 interviews of a 13-year-old boy and Todd explaining to law enforcement on the day. So this isn't occurring weeks later or months later or years later. This is happening contemporaneous with the crime. And what we know from investigations is that the best information from a witness is that contemporaneous information to the event. So the closer to the event, the better. Because you don't want that information contaminated. You don't want that person talking to other people or other...
Vouching, improper testimony. Again, what he's saying is, if I understand it, and certainly the court can make the determination, is that they were telling the truth because their stories were closer in time to the events in question. How is that not a credibility determination, saying they were telling...
Thank you, Danny, for contributing to the Fix Jamie's Crack Fund.
I dropped my iPad a couple times and now it's just, I don't know. I'm too lazy to get it fixed and it's super old.
Stop dropping your iPad.
I wish I could. I wish I didn't.
Maybe don't do crack and then fondle your iPad. Crack is whack. Crack is Lefty's anti-drug. And Farrell is with you on the crack boat.
the truth then, but we're not later on?
Well, and I think the answer is turning into a narrative. Let's just have a new question, please, Ms. Thompson.
I'll ask another question, Your Honor. Did you see evidence of confirmation bias in the way that authorities...
Here's $5. Give Jamie some duct tape and an ABC gum. Her crack will be good. I don't know what ABC gum is, but I'll try and see if I can find it when she comes here. Thank you, Lefty.
Thanks for your concern, everyone.
Have to get your dad on it. He can fix it.
No.
relied on the text messages and the messages between witnesses in this case.
Yes,
I
in
thought it
certain
was fine.
circumstances I did.
And can you explain what evidence of confirmation bias you saw in that respect?
Well, there was a couple of texts that Amy had related to a confrontation that she'd had with her mother-in-law, Peggy Munson. And those texts, if you take the text out of context, it appears that Amy is talking about Todd, that she's going to, if this ever happens again, I'm going to leave, take the kids. And then, so it sounds very damaging by itself, but if you take it within the context of all of the other texts, you realize that she's not talking about Todd. She's talking about her relationship with her mother-in-law and the problems that she had there. And that goes on for a couple of days. And she even has that discussion with Todd. So I think it's really important that you take all of these conversations in context and look at what's going on before and after the conversations.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Poor guy, he's just sitting there.
Yeah.
The text messages that you were just referencing, Mr. Safrick, do you understand that that Ms. Mullis's mother-in-law in this case was Elaine Mullis? Do you recall? Go ahead, Mr. Safrick.
Sorry?
Do you recall, as you sit here today, the name of
Oh,
Mr. Mullis's mother or Miss Mullis's mother-in-law?
yeah, sorry, I misspoke. Right.
In general, the testimony that you've provided today, if Mr. Mullis's counsel had consulted with you before Mr. Mullis's trial, is this information that you could have provided to Mr. Mullis's attorney?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Safrick.
Good morning, Counselor.
How long have you had what was your experience length in law enforcement specifically?
In law enforcement?
Yes.
Well, I started in 1977 as a police officer working in patrol. As I said, I promoted into detective, started in property crimes, went to violent crimes. And then in 1983, I applied to the FBI. I got in, and my first office was working in an Indian reservation in Wyoming. I worked there for 3.5 years, working all the violent crimes on the reservation. I went and then was transferred to the New York City office.
I thought that it was tribal law on the reservations.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
I didn't know the
Yes.
feds was doing a tribal law. She will be leaving Thursday.
Thursday. I went over and
So,
see Dave this weekend, so because I had to go
What?
get your present from him.
Are you going to
Yeah,
see Dave?
I drove to Dave's house on Saturday. I got to see the tree house and his chicks.
Did it smell
He
like
showed me his-
vanilla?
Yeah, I made sure I sprayed myself good.
So his house smells like a vanilla shortcake right now.
Mm.
Well, that's.
I tried my best.
Did you sneak in some of those murder candles?
He made me some coffee. He had some baby chicks. And they're- so I
Did you
had to go
steal
see
one?
him. I really wanted to. They were so cute.
Why did you say that? It's about to be dinner time, and now I have that in my head. Ugh. Of course, it smells like vanilla. I'm just. I'll know when Jamie is about to arrive because all of a sudden it'll smell like a bakery in the arrival.
I didn't
area.
go too crazy. I was mindful. But I smell how I smell.
Is this what you're looking for? I just want to.
Mostly, I was just trying to check. I believe it's 30 years or so that you had in law enforcement, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
So is the bulk of your experience testifying in court is actually from an agent perspective, correct? Or an officer perspective too?
Well, I was a supervisory special agent in the behavioral analysis unit.
Right, but in court cases specifically, is the bulk of your testimonial experience experience when you've taken the stand has been as an officer or an agent, right?
Yes.
And your background is in law enforcement specifically, fair?
That's very broad. I don't know what you mean by law enforcement.
You have no expertise or specialization in psychology, fair? You're not a psychologist?
Correct.
Not a psychiatrist?
Correct.
As you confirmed on direct examination, you're not a doctor, right?
That's right.
So you're in the fields of psychology, such as social psychology, you aren't able to speak to the dynamics between people, fair?
No, I wouldn't say that's true.
Well, you are not a social psychologist who has been certified to testify on that matter specifically, the social psychology of interfamilial relationships, right?
No, I testify about relationship dynamics all the time as an expert witness.
Correct, but your primary expertise, in fact, for the bulk of it, your expertise is in the field of crime scene analysis or law enforcement investigation, right?
Well, yes, I would say that crime scene analysis is the baseline for all of the type of analysis that I do, yes.
And in your report, you detail it as crime scene analysis as being your primary expertise as well, fair?
I don't know that I detail it in my report that way. As I said, crime scene analysis is sort of the bedrock of all of the type of analysis that I do in complex death assessment cases, whether they're homicides or serial murders or equivocal deaths. I have extensive training in that area.
Correct, but on page 3 of your report specifically, you say, quote, 2 published appellate opinions allow my expert testimony in crime scene analysis, right?
Right, I have lots of opinions. I have lots of appellate courts that have upheld my testimony many times. I only put those in there because they were published opinions.
Well, the Illinois Supreme Court also issued a published opinion in People v. King. Are you aware of that case?
I am, yes.
And they found, in that case, would you agree that the appellate court or the Supreme Court of the state of Illinois found your testimony inadmissible in its entirety, correct?
Yes.
And it relied on a similar case by the New Jersey appellate court as well, finding similar testimony on profiling, for instance, or what your testimony was being offered in that case went beyond the bounds of your expertise, correct?
I've never testified about profiling. Profiling is not allowed in the court. Profiling is essentially linking the defendant to the behaviors at the crime scene that would interfere with the purview of the jury and the court and the judge. I've never testified about criminal profiling.
Not even in the case of...
Are you speaking about the Fortin case?
Well, on the matter
You're talking about the New Jersey. You're talking about New Jersey. Is that the Fortin case?
I believe it's State v. Lennon, if that sounds correct.
Yeah, that's the Fortin case, yes.
And similarly, you were found or profiled as an ex-FBI profiler in the case of, I believe, Raymond Lee Jennings, correct? Are you familiar with that case?
Objection.
Yes.
It just, the question, I think, was you were found or profiled as an expert. I didn't understand the term that the counsel was using there, Your Honor.
Did you wish to clarify, counsel? I mean, I guess I heard the witness answer, so apparently the witness wasn't confused.
I mean, I can clarify, Your Honor, but the witness already answered the question.
I guess, Ms. Thompson, if you just want to come back on redirect, you can clarify.
Understood, Your Honor.
Well, you mentioned that you've never done profiling before, and you would agree that it would be inadmissible testimony to do a profile, correct?
Yes.
But similar matters where I guess your testimony in People v. King at the appellate level labeled your testimony profiling of characteristics consistent with crimes. Would you agree with that?
I don't know how they characterize it, but I've never testified about profiling.
So today you're not providing a profile, for instance, of who would have committed this crime, right?
No.
But you are profiling the victim in what you've coined as victimology, right?
Right. You have to understand the history of the victim is when you're looking at a death scene case.
You comment on her behaviors as being manipulative or otherwise, right?
Objection, Your Honor. That was not his testimony today.
Overruled. The witness can answer if he's able.
So part of so you're taking things out of context here. I said that when you look at Amy's conversations with various people, she presents a different side of herself to whomever she's talking to. That is a relatively normal thing most people do, depending on the relationship that a person has with the person they're talking to.
But you would agree, thank you, Mr. Stafford, but my question really was, you refer to her at times as being described as manipulative or otherwise, fair, in your report?
Yes, I did.
So those findings comment on her characteristics as a victim, right?
Well, I've characterized a lot of things about her.
Right, her personal traits, fair?
Right. Right, and this was also referred to by other witnesses who described her the same way.
Face.
So I guess, Mr. Safrick, you're just going, is it fair to say that you drew all of your inferences from the existing record evidence established or collected by law enforcement?
Look how far down he catches his comb over.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible, and his face is terrible.
I would say if it wasn't combed over, it'll be flopping down to below his ear. Come on, buddy. We've been advising you for a week now. Just get it done. Just do like Lefty, cut it off and put on a cap. Admit that you're bald. It's fine. A lot of famous people were bald. Telly Savalas, Gandhi. Come on now.
On this side of things, or presented at trial. Is that about right?
Well, I didn't do any independent investigation. I didn't, go to the scene and conduct an investigation. So, as I always do, I have to rely on the reports and the investigation conducted by law enforcement and others associated with the case, like the medical examiners and toxicologists and such.
But on direct examination, you testified that there was no scene in this case. Is that right?
There was no staged scene.
Well, you would agree that Amy Mullis was found on her hands and knees on your review, right?
She was found with her hands tucked under her, yes, lying on the floor in the shed.
And she was found impaled by a corn rake.
Yes.
And you would agree that based on the evidence you reviewed at least, Mr. Mullis sent his son to find the pet carrier check on it, right?
Correct.
And ultimately sent him in to find his mother, true?
I don't think he sent him to find her. He sent him to get the pet carrier.
And in doing so, find his mother, right? Or found his mother.
He did.
And then Mr. Mullis grabbed the corn rake and pulled it out of Miss Mullis's back, right?
Yes.
And in doing so, touched the weapon, in this case, or what would be called a poor weapon, I believe, as you characterized it, right?
Yes.
And so there wouldn't be any DNA evidence specifically that you'd be able to pull from the handle of the rake, right?
Why wouldn't you be able to pull DNA evidence?
Well, let's say fingerprints. Mr. Mullis's fingerprints would be on the rake then, right?
They could be.
So in your experience of 30 years in law enforcement, you would agree pulling latent prints might be difficult, right?
Pulling latent prints depends on the surface you're pulling them from. So if you have an old, worn, dirty corn rake handle made out of wood, probably be difficult to pull latent prints.
And so when Mr. Mullis pulled the corn rake out of Amy Mullis's back, he discarded it next to her at some point, right?
Yes.
And you would agree that based on the record evidence, Mr. Mullis admitted to putting the rake in that shed, correct?
Well, yes, his recollection was that, 2 weeks prior, he set it against but he hadn't seen it since. Set it against the wall, but hadn't seen it since.
But he was the last person, based upon your review of the records, who knew or saw that corn rake with any certainty, right?
Yes.
And it was Mr. Mullis who sent Amy Mullis to get that pet carrier, correct?
Yes.
So he sent her to a specific location, right?
Yes.
For a specific purpose, right?
Correct.
Where nobody else would be, true?
Oh my God.
Well, he didn't know that his other children wouldn't be out there.
Well, you're speculating on that front, fair? You don't know one way or the other. You have never interviewed those kids. And you have no testimonial statements one way or the other as to whether he thought they'd be in there, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, but look, I'm looking
sorry,
at this.
Mr. Stafford, there was an objection.
Oh, I'm
It's,
sorry.
I'll withdraw the objection, Your Honor.
Oh, now the objection's withdrawn. You may continue your answer.
So I'm looking at all of this is what is reasonable, what is likely by reasonable inference. So the information is that Todd and Tristan were in the hog barn with Amy for an hour maybe. So there's no way he would actually know where his other two children were.
Well, he left them inside the house, right?
Yeah, but they're 8 and 10. They're kids. So
Well, in the middle
you'd have to be certain
but
they weren't going to be outside.
But you can't be certain that he didn't know they were going to remain inside, right? Because you don't have any independent information and you have conducted no investigation yourself, right?
Correct.
You speak at length about the manners of death to be investigated, right? The 5 different manners of death that are recognized, true?
Well, just in terms of an equivocal death evaluation, yes.
But ultimately, you agree that in your conclusions, you were asked to provide an opinion on whether the manner of death in this case was homicide or that there was a more logical explanation for Amy's death, right?
Right. When I got the case, I didn't know anything about the case in terms of, I knew how she died, but what the manner of death was, I didn't know. That was my point. It was to conduct an equivocal death evaluation that basically determined that it was either going to be, that the two most consistent manners would either be homicide or accident.
So your conclusion was the two most consistent manners of death, in your opinion, would be homicide or accident?
Right, because there was nothing there that indicated this was a natural death, and there was nothing, in my experience, in terms of having seen well over 4,000 homicide cases and death cases, that this was a suicide. So, by reasonable inference, you're left with either accident or homicide.
You would agree that Google searches in the history, as introduced at trial, though, about, quote, what happens to cheaters in history, and, quote, killing unfaithful women, would point to potential motive or any purpose, right, based on your understanding of planning?
Well, see, counselor, I think you're taking that out of context. That's not very good of you to do that. Oh. It's completely out of context. Those searches appeared to be related to schoolwork.
Your testimony today is that, quote, killing unfaithful women was a school assignment?
You're taking it out of context, I think. That's my opinion. There is information that suggests that these were searches done by the kids.
And I might have missed it in your report. Did you at any point reference those Google searches?
No, I did not.
So nothing that would have potentially cut against the point. You only found one factor that weighed in favor of finding it was a homicide, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Your experts do the same. I hate it when they, so you only looked at one side. So did your guys.
Yeah, and to sit here and say these Google searches show he was planning, that's the stupidest thing in the world.
Yeah, get me the date, what's the 5 Google searches before and after.
And get a Google expert on the stand that knows what UTC time is and can calculate it into Iowa time, because he certainly didn't. So he don't even know.
It's plus 6 because it's an hour after Eastern time. So 1 a.m. would be 5 in the afternoon.
Yes, I did.
The basis of your objection, Ms. Thompson?
That's a compound question, Your Honor, but the witness has answered, so I'll withdraw the objection.
The objection's overruled. The answer will remain in the record.
And that was that most women are murdered by people they know. That's right?
Yes.
But you didn't weigh any other motive evidence, did you?
Counselor, I reviewed all this information in detail. I was open to the possibility that this was a homicide and that counsel that contacted me was, incorrect. And that was my job, to figure out what, based on the information and my review of all the information, what was the most likely and consistent manner of death. That was my job. And I considered it a homicide as well. Well,
correct me if I'm wrong, but in your report you don't mention Tristan Mullis's trial testimony, do you?
I don't know. I listed everything that I used, that I received and reviewed. I have to say that I wrote this report in the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, so it is several years old for me at this point. But I have listed everything that I reviewed.
Well, I'll ask you this question. Do you recall anywhere in your report that you testified to your conclusions at length on direct examination?
Thank you so much, Mr. Meathook. We try to provide good panelists. We are working on another panel for next Sunday with some new faces. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe some returning faces, but until confirmations, nothing will be said, because then it'll just come off as, someone is having beef. And there's enough trouble on YouTube.
Yeah.
But thank you that you liked it. More than 10,000 views, Jamie. 10,000.
I saw 11K this morning.
Oh,
and I was
11K.
like, oh, look at that.
I'm gonna make $40.
You are. That's $40 of your life.
For instance, that report, do you mention Tristan Mullis's testimony that Todd Mullis's father was out of his sight for an indeterminate amount of time?
He said an hour, like 40 minutes at most.
If
Or
you can
a
reference
minute.
to me, I believe you're referencing an interview with Tristan that occurred well over a year after the incident.
I'm not, Mr. Safrick. Did you review the trial transcripts in this case?
If I have them listed, I did.
But you don't make reference or note them in your report, do you?
Well, I listed in my report what I reviewed.
So I guess I'll phrase it in the hypothetical then, Mr. Safrick. In your opinion, if Tristan Mullis, under oath, swore that his father left the hog barn and left his site for an indeterminate amount of time at trial, would that change your testimony?
No.
Why?
Because, as I said before, the initial interviews are, in my experience, the most accurate, and when they're contemporaneous with the event, they were unfiltered, unbiased, unimpeded. There was nobody to influence him. By the time trial has come around, what he heard and who has talked to him and who has influenced him, I don't know. But those kinds of that kind of testimony is problematic for me. I relied on the contemporaneous interviews done by law enforcement on that day, multiple interviews with both Tristan and Todd, independent, where their stories were exactly the same.
Well, Mr. Safrick, I'm going to ask a follow-up question on this one.
I agree.
Does it change the fact that at each time Tristan Mullis took an oath to tell the truth and testify in a deposition or a court proceeding like you did today, does that weigh in favor of finding that to be a potential protective factor, that maybe this was a homicide?
Again, I reviewed in my complete review that everything suggests that this was not a staged case and that this was not a homicide.
Correct. But my question was, does Tristan Mullis's sworn testimony that Todd Mullis left his site change the fact that those are his under oath statements, and the statements you reference were not under oath?
Objection.
I understand.
Objection, Your Honor. That misstates the testimony and the facts in this case.
Yeah.
Overruled, the witness can answer.
Yes, I understand what you're asking. I understand that those statements were under oath, but I would consider them. But I would say that in the context of everything that I reviewed, the contemporaneous statements made by a 13-year-old boy were accurate, and he repeated those statements. And not only that it's consistent. His statements and Todd's statements are consistent with what would be expected if you found your wife, unresponsive in a shed. Those activities of lifting her head and wiping her face, all of those things are consistent with somebody rendering aid, yelling at your son to get the truck. Those are all consistent, and those statements were consistent. So I would value those statements in the context of everything that I reviewed more than I would the statements under oath.
So his sworn testimony is less than the unsworn statements, yes?
He's a 13-year-old boy. Have we ever seen kids being helped to remember certain things? That kid changed his testimony about how long his dad was away from him.
And it wasn't even, it went from like maybe 30 seconds to like a minute 20 or something. It wasn't even like crazy. But I agree with him. I agree that statements made at the time are probably more beneficial than the ones made later on down the road.
Yeah. But he's probably just looking at this officer and thinking, oh, he's twice my age and with that full head of hair.
He's mad.
Did I just understand that correctly? I'm only confirming as a yes or no.
Sure. Yes. That's how I would view that. Yes.
Do you have your report in front of you, Mr. Safrick?
I do.
Well, she clearly lied, so I really hated her testimony.
Can I refer you to page 6 if possible?
Certainly.
Let me know when you're there, please.
I will. Okay.
In the first paragraph at the top of page 6, in the last sentence, I believe, I'll read aloud and let me know if I read it correctly. Quote, "In this case, I yielded the attempt to reconstruct an exact sequence of events. Such an attempt is impractical due to the innumerable possible interactions between Amy, the environment, and others." Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
In your opinion, then, an accident reconstruction wasn't feasible here. Is that fair to say?
No, what I'm saying is that oftentimes when I'm questioned at trial, counsel will ask me, isn't it possible that this could have occurred? And generally what I would say is that when you're dealing with what's possible, literally thousands of things are possible. It's impossible to know the exact sequence to the second of what is actually occurring. So rather than dealing with possibilities, which is nearly impossible, my job is to look at what is likely by reasonable inference from the evidence, the physical evidence, behavioral evidence, forensic evidence. I can't deal with what's possible. The possibilities are endless.
Well, I appreciate that,
Mr.
Mr.
what I'm
Safric.
saying there.
I appreciate that, Mr. Safric, but on page 6, you are speaking about reconstructing the exact sequence of events, correct?
Right.
And so you said such an attempt to, quote, reconstruct an exact sequence of events, I believe those are your words, is impractical, right?
Correct.
So in your opinion, it would be impractical to be able to speak to any certainty about the exact sequence of events, right?
No, he said you can't do it.
Yes, you can't speak to certainty about the exact sequence, and I can't know the exact sequence of literally any crime that I've looked at, but I can draw reasonable inferences based on the evidence.
So just to clarify, I guess, as we work towards the end here,
Sure.
we can agree that Todd Mullis asked Amy Mullis to go get the pet carrier, right?
Yes,
So he sent her to a location, right?
he did.
And we can agree that at least Tristan Mullis's sworn testimony was that his father left his site for an immeasurable amount of time or an unknown amount of time, right?
Objection.
Immeasurable amount of time.
Stop
unknown.
saying that, because it's not.
Yeah,
what
it
happened.
sounds really good, but if his statement was it was something between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, that he states it like, well, he was gone for 2 days.
Yeah, he was just out of his sight for like a couple hours.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to go to the grocery store, pick up some new food because everything was spoiled in the house.
Yeah, wasn't like that at all.
That misstates the testimony.
Well,
I don't know what the sworn testimony was.
the answer will remain in the record.
But you reference and cite in your report, which you have in front of you right now, Mr. Safric, that you reviewed the trial transcripts, right?
Well, was that his testimony?
Like,
That
I don't know, I have
my
multiple
dad was
pages
gone
of
for a
things
measurable
I reviewed. I
amount of
don't recall
time.
if I did, or if it's listed here, I did. I just, I just have multiple pages, and it's a couple years ago I wrote this, so.
In this period of time, you have never once evaluated reports or information provided by a Valentina Nye, for instance, right?
I'm sorry, by who?
That, I think, answers my question. You haven't referred to reports or reviewed reports from one Valentina Nye, right?
No, I have not. Dr. Nye? No.
Correct. Dr. Nye would be a way to
Correct.
refer to her.
That's correct. I have not reviewed any reports of hers.
And your conclusions around the scene and the distances between buildings aren't based on your research or your findings specifically, right?
Right, I relied on other experts who conducted those measurements.
And would you agree that there is a difference or a distinction between one being dead or deceased and one being pronounced dead?
I'm not clear on your question.
Sure.
Someone's dead or they're pronounced dead?
So Amy Mullis was pronounced dead at the hospital, correct?
She was.
But she was found unresponsive in the shed on your review, correct?
Yes.
And there were not signs of life accordingly at that point in time. Is that a fair description of the evidence or the record?
Objection, Your Honor. This is calling for a medical opinion from this witness, which he stated he's not providing.
The witness can certainly, I guess, testify as to his understanding based on his review of the records. I won't interpret his testimony as providing any medical opinion. With that understanding, Mr. Safric, you may answer the question if you remember it at this point.
I do. Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I don't believe there was there's anything that indicated that she was dead in the shed. She was transported. They were doing CPR on her at the roadside. And I believe, if my recollection serves me correctly, that the doctors in the hospital worked on her for over an hour. So at some point she was pronounced deceased, but there's no evidence that she was deceased when Todd found her in the shed.
Did you find any?
She was unresponsive, but no indication she had already passed.
Did she ever come to or become responsive again based on your review of the evidence?
Counselor, that would be a question for the emergency room doctors who worked on her. I don't know.
Although you just testified to what they found or how long they worked on him, right?
I believe that my
Sir.
If it's not stated in the report, he can't have an opinion upon it. Why are you such a C word?
Look at his little head cock. Ugh.
Yeah, and look at his co-counsel. No chin.
And these guys had nothing to do with the first trial, by the way.
These two guys looks like they didn't dance at prom. Maybe with each other, but no one else.
They didn't get invited.
Well, Baldy's mom said he was very dapper when he left. And Chinless, he really wanted to go, but his pet rock collection, so he couldn't accept all the invitations he got.
The recollection is they worked on her for about an hour before they pronounced her.
But you can
So
come to,
my sense is that they believed that she was alive. I mean, I have a lot of experience with individuals who are either declared deceased at the scene because it's apparently obvious they're deceased, or as soon as they get to the hospital, they're declared deceased. That's not what occurred here, so.
she wasn't declared deceased at the hospital?
Not immediately. I've had, hundreds and hundreds of cases where offenders or where victims are declared deceased as soon as they arrive at the emergency room. But that was not the case here. So I don't know. There's nothing that says that she was deceased, and people believed, because they were working on her, that she was still alive.
Sure. Mr. Safrick, we were provided a list of your prior testimony in the last 4 years. I believe that lists, is it 2 trials that you've testified in? Or 1 trial?
I don't have that list in front of me, but whatever, it should be accurate, yes.
How many trials do you believe you've testified in the last 4 years or so?
Trials, probably those 2.
And
there's 2 on there.
You also list depositions, I believe, for a grand total of 4 items or 5 items or so. Does that sound about right?
Yes. If I provided that, that's accurate, yes.
And it isn't in criminal cases specifically, right?
Well, they're civil cases, but they're all related to criminal, typically homicides. So I have to evaluate all of those homicide scenes.
Sure. And how much were you paid for this case?
Well, not enough. But I did a lot of the work pro bono after. I got paid initially, but I've done a lot of work pro bono, and I've not, just because, they don't really have the money. And I think it's worthwhile to provide my insight in this case.
Thank you, but that didn't actually answer my question. How much were you paid on this case?
I think $10,000.
Okay. And how much pro bono work have you done?
I do a lot of pro bono work for various organizations. All my work for the VDOC Society is pro bono. I do other cases pro bono. So.
Right, but I am asking specifically about this case, Mr. Safrick.
This case. Right, a lot of my time, probably 25 to 30 hours has been pro bono.
Is your hourly rate $500 an hour for a 4-hour minimum?
Stop with the experts being paid for doing a job. All of your experts that you will bring is getting paid. You're being paid to sit there and be a snarky little C word. People make a paycheck.
Yeah, it's just annoying. And it's a bench trial, so it's like, who cares?
I hate it because I can buy your opinion. So because the state pays your paycheck, you will always side with the sitting government. Is that how we should infer it? I really hate that argument, and I wish that some lawyer, some judge somewhere would make the precedent and saying not relevant for this trial. You, counsel, obtain a paycheck. So does this expert. He's doing a job. Shut up. Oh.
I know.
And it does. He's paid 500. That's, I think the low end we heard from expert is like 350. High end is in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
500 is basic bitch pay for expert testimony. And it's a bench trial. The judge is getting paid as well. So is the court reporter.
That's my testimony for depositions, but my hourly rate is $400 for analysis and casework.
And how many hours have you done of work on this case?
I don't know offhand.
Could you ballpark it like you did for the 25 to 30 hours of pro bono work?
60 to 70 hours of work. It's been over, I was retained in July of 2022. So it's been, 3 years?
So 60 to 70 hours of work total or inclusive of your quote unquote pro bono hours?
That's probably total.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Any redirect?
A few questions, Your Honor. Mr. Safrick, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 281. While this is being pulled up, this is a multi-page document, and I'm going to have my colleague scroll through Exhibit 281, and I'm going to ask you if this looks like a true and accurate copy of your CV and your report in this case.
I'll object, Your Honor. This isn't in evidence, and certainly it includes hearsay statements and testimony, and we would, have that evidentiary fight later on, but we've been having it for quite some time, so as the court knows, we would reiterate our same objections here. Also, this report's unsigned, out of compliance with the rules of civil procedure, and therefore not properly applied to. But we would raise our standard objection. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I guess, counsel, were there additional arguments that you wish to address at a later time with regard to this exhibit, or?
I'm just showing him a CV, Your Honor. That was my intention right now.
Okay. Well, go ahead with that for now.
Yes, this is my CV. When I update my CV, I change the date at the bottom of the pages, so it shows January of 2025. I think I had an article published, and so I updated the CV, but that's accurate.
All right, and Exhibit 281 is a true and accurate copy of your CV and your report in this case?
Well, all I can see is the CV at the moment. But yeah, that's my CV, yes.
Let me know when you've had a chance to determine whether this is a true and accurate copy of your report.
Okay. Yes. I was looking for the date on it. It appears to be yes.
Your Honor, we can...
It's 57 pages. If it's 57 pages, then yes.
All right, and Your Honor, we can take up any other issues with this document at a later time.
All right, we'll do that.
You can take the document down. You were asked some questions about medical issues in this case. Did you review reports from a forensic pathologist and a biomechanical engineer related to the Mullis case, Mr. Safrick?
I did.
And do you defer to the expert opinions of those experts in their respective fields?
I do.
And do you, when you indicate that you are not able to determine sort of when you are not able to determine exactly how events might have transpired here, do you intend to offer an opinion about whether a biomechanical engineer could offer opinions about that topic?
No, I don't.
I mean, are you disputing any of the opinions of pathology and biomechanical experts in this case?
No, I'm not.
You were asked some questions about the rake and some of the things that occurred after Ms. Mullis was found in this case. Was Mr. Mullis removing the rake from Ms. Mullis, was that an attempt, is that behavior that's consistent with staging a scene?
No.
Why not?
Again, the purpose of staging is to create a scene that law enforcement can attend, the investigators can attend, and then see the scene and make their assessments on the adulterated, changed scene. Because again, you're trying to create a new motive for the crime, and then that's what you want. That's what you want law enforcement to see. So you don't create it and then destroy it. And everything that I saw is consistent with him rendering aid. It's consistent in their statements as well, with him rendering aid.
If there is testimony in this case that Mr. Mullis's daughter, who was a minor, saw the corn rake in the shed near the time that Ms. Mullis suffered her injuries, would that change your opinion that Todd Mullis was the only person to reference seeing the rake in that area?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Yes, I knew that the kids played in the shed, and Tristan suggested at one point that maybe they had moved the rake, but I don't think anybody knew where the rake was. It was never identified in a particular location, except I think Todd said a couple.
40% of your chat has the good stuff. Stop being so selfish, people. Us old folks lose touch with certain salespeople, and they are hard to find. Sounds like Brandon had a weekend that didn't pan out as he hoped it would pan out. So now his wife was away. He was trying to get a hold of that old business contact in the inner city. Maybe he should get in contact with your person, Jamie, with your crack on your screen.
Oh, jeez, no.
I'm just saying.
Weeks prior, he put it against the shed door.
And are Todd's statements about where he left the rake, are those consistent with someone staging the scene, as you've testified about?
Objection, vouching and improper testimony for through prejudice.
Sustained.
As I said earlier, yeah, twice have they turned over everything. It's supplemental reports, so it's probably all of these chain of custody reports that, but I can only see the headlines. I can't read what's in them.
You know, I didn't ask you your opinion about how you would evaluate the cause of Ms. Mullis's death, but the state did. So I'll ask you. I mean,
If you're outside of Miami, you're probably closer to the good stuff than anyone in chat.
did you reach a conclusion about what the likely cause of Ms. Mullis's death was?
Objection, improper opinion testimony. He can't come to a pathological diagnosis, Your Honor.
They opened the door to this, Your Honor.
Yeah, you asked.
Did you want to respond to that, Mr.
Sure.
Rudin?
Listen to Chinless.
Was?
Objection, improper opinion testimony. He can't come to a pathological diagnosis, Your Honor.
They opened the door to this, Your Honor.
Did you want to respond to that,
Didn't he say we did?
Yeah. I thought he did.
Mr.
Sure.
Rudin?
We didn't have a report. We didn't ask for his report to provide us an ultimate testimonial determination. Ultimately, the question was, isn't the basis of your report in the ultimate conclusion for you to decide whether or not this was a homicide or an accident? That's what's cited at 56 and 57. When he was coming to a determination, he said he couldn't speak to a manner of death specifically because he's not to undermine the pathological opinions or the medical opinions here. Simply put, that's the basis of that testimony was to object on the basis of that he is not an expert who can provide that and render an opinion.
I mean, I guess, Ms. Thompson, that's how I understood the witness's answer as well. If you understood or believe something differently, you may respond, but otherwise, the objection is sustained.
Well, just to make clear my point, Your Honor, I mean, the state asked him a number of questions about why he did not determine this was a homicide. We don't intend to offer him as a medical expert. He's not a medical expert. But given that they inquired about those conclusions, it's our position we should be able to inquire about his conclusions as well. But I understand the court's ruling, and I'll abide by it.
Thank you.
One moment, Your Honor.
That's the worst part about going to hotels, that they always look good on the website where you order them. That's why I always go in and read all the reviews on what's it called? I can't remember, but I always look at the reviews, especially if it's a little bit older. Especially in Greece, they always have, oh, this is the most wonderful, and then you come down there, half the hotel isn't built. So always double check. Why are we sitting here?
No, no.
Two more questions, Your Honor. One is, Mr. Safrick, you were asked some questions about whether you're testifying as a profiler in this case. Are any of your opinions in Mr. Mullis's case based on your experience in profiling possible criminal defendants? Your Honor, I don't know if the witness was able to hear me. It might have been because my mic was off. I apologize. Let me just read. Mr. Safrick, I assume you could not hear my question. I apologize. I think my mic was off. So let me restate.
No, I didn't hear it.
Apologies. Let me restate that question. You were asked some questions on cross about whether the opinions you were providing in this case were based on your experience as a profiler. And my question for you is, are any of the opinions that you're offering about the Mullis investigation opinions you're offering in the context of being able to profile potential criminal defendants?
No.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No needed, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Safrick. It appears that your testimony is complete. I'll go ahead and end the Zoom at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
For those of us here in the courtroom, this is probably a good point to take our...
So, pretty good testimony, I think. Let's see what people are thinking about, because I asked in a poll, based on what his team has brought out, will the judge give him a new trial? And 60% says no. And I still don't think they have provided enough there. I still can't see her. He's had a trial, he had an appeal. I don't feel there's enough new stuff in it to overturn that. I'm sorry. I know Jamie's right now sending La Chancla across the sea to hit me in the face, but it's too little, in my opinion. And it's the biomechanical engineer was facts-based. This guy that was opinion. No, I don't think that it looks staged. How do a staged crime scene look? And you can weigh it up and down. So I don't think there's enough. They need something with, as I said somewhere, they need to put the meat and potatoes on the table, and I don't feel they do it. I feel they did good, because that was the good lawyer today. The next witness, who we don't know who is, they'll probably bungle it up, and the rest of the day will be asking the same guy 5 questions, because they can't get anything out there. I'm thinking. Hey, Ombi. Great to see you. It's terrible. I don't think he did it, and I doubt he gets a new trial. Yeah, because it's such a high bar to turn it over, and I'm still not sure what basis they have to seek the new trial. They claimed an effective counsel, but they also claim other evidence. And he didn't have an effective counsel. Just because his lawyer chose to say, well, I believe the cops, that's not an effective counsel. So...
I just hope there's something in all of this that will help this guy out, because I don't believe he should be in jail the rest of his life without parole, without the possibility of parole. But I know.
It's Dave, Jamie. So, if you were wondering. But it's still been a minute since you've been here.
Hi, Dave.
It's, I think it's an innocent project, and they apparently use it to give the lawyers some work practice, and they are very, very bad, I have to say it. Probably not start out your team with a case of this magnitude. They are reading scripts, and this lady, even though she's the experienced one, she doesn't listen to questions, to answers. She has a list of questions, and she just lallies her way through it. She did it again with this guy. He answered something, and then she asked her exactly the same thing, because she didn't listen to his answer, and it's annoying.
And he was good. I liked him. I think he held his own on the prosecution side.
Yeah. Yeah, sadly no Kim Kardashian. Yeah, they must have written something, but it's apparently not the people who wrote it who's in the courtroom. Because I can't see anything other than the biomechanical engineer so far that works in his favor. Because again, the last guy is just an opinion guy. He looked at the evidence and said, no, I have another conclusion of the evidence. And that's expert versus expert.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully that's enough, but we'll see. But try to make me watch that movie.
I don't live in Ireland. Are you going to Ireland? You're gonna. I'm in Denmark. We don't have leprechauns. That's a weird mythical creature that no one believes.
Oh, but the gnomes and the what else is there?
Gnomes are real.
But not leprechauns.
Jimmy, it's completely different things. Leprechauns are going around. Oh my, me pot of gold. Give me my pot of gold. Gnomes burn down your house. Two very different, distinct creatures, and one of them is real, and the other one lives in Ireland. Just to make sure.
Yeah.
Valhalla,
Leprechaun
have
seems
you?
so nice.
Valhalla, have you seen what's happening on the 4th of June? The expert sent me the schedule for the Dwarf Wrestling League. They're having a show on the 4th of June. 43 to 60 something bucks to get a ticket, but still, midget wrestling.
Oh my goodness.
Well, congratulations to Miss 1000 Swaysher. Mrs. maybe.
Well, happy birthday to your mom.
Happy birthday to you, Mom. Happy birthday to you, Mom. Happy birthday, dear Mommy. Happy birthday to your mom. Why can't I find it? Why can't I find the advertisement he sent me? He sent me a commercial for... The expert wants me to buy a Sarajevo 84 Olympics jacket. I don't know why. Well, it's the expert. I actually been where the Olympic torch was at the 84 Olympics. That was used as a sniper's nest in the conflict. So the more you know. It was at what's called Tito's Palace, which is his residence looking over Sarajevo. And that's where they had the sniper nest shooting down into the city.
Well,
I know a lot of stuff, Jamie.
You do.
But Danny T is just, oh, I can slap you down. I went to the Winter Olympics in Utah. No, nothing other than the state is a little C word, and the witness stood up against him. But the witness was an opinion witness, so I don't think she'll be swayed by what he said.
Please be seated. Ms. Nichols-Cook, additional evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The applicant would call Lynn White.
All right. Ms. White? Take your time, please. You can come forward and have a seat in the chair to my left.
No chair.
Didn't play a tuba
Yep, go ahead.
in the
Oh.
military.
Our chair disappeared. Well, that's interesting.
Someone
We can
stole
grab
the
one
chair.
from over here.
And when I left my mandatory service, I signed up again as an international. That's why they wanted me out there.
Thank you.
No, there's no. Well, she will almost instantly give it. She read all the testimony. She already knows she's not going to grant it to him unless some legal bomb goes off in the room and changes everything. She already knows. She already has her opinion written, and I'm just hoping that they'll soon stop, because the witnesses so far they brought, only one of them has actually said something that physically proves that it could be an accident.
All right. If you'd raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be true and correct?
Yes.
Okay. You can turn that microphone on in front of you there. There's a button in the bottom center.
No, they're blue. It's gnomes are the evil ones who lives on your attic and make your cows limp, turn the milk sour, and steal your kids.
And then feel free to adjust the chair and the microphone so that you can sit comfortably. Yep, okay.
What was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
Feel free to adjust the chair and the microphone so that you can sit comfortably.
All right.
Okay. Ms. Nichols-Cook, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. White. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thank you.
Can you state your name for the record and spell your name for the court reporter?
Lynn White, W-H-I-T-E.
Is lavender back? That's a color I haven't seen in a long time. Especially for women. The last time I saw lavender, it was because I had lavender shirts.
And Ms. White, how do you know Todd Mullis?
I am his older sister,
And where do you currently live?
Dubuque County.
Did you grow up here in Delaware County?
Yes, I did.
And what do you do for work?
Currently, I am a office manager for a construction company.
How long have you been there?
14 years.
Prior to that, what did you do?
I was a city clerk treasurer for a small town in Dubuque County for 10 years, a neighboring county for 5 years as a deputy clerk, and I also worked in the banking industry for 5 years.
Do you have other siblings in addition to Todd?
Yes.
Who are they?
I have an older sister, Lori, an older sister, Mike, and the two younger boys, Pat and Todd.
And Mike's your brother.
Correct.
We've heard some references in other testimony about Lynn and Mike. Would that be you and your brother Mike that people are talking about as far as helping with things around the family farms?
Yes.
And then is Leroy Mullis your dad?
Yes.
Do your parents and your brothers all live close to where Todd and Amy Mullis were living in 2018?
Yes, all within about 5 miles.
And does your family, including your parents and your brothers, do they currently farm?
Yes.
Have they always farmed?
Yes.
Is it crops or livestock?
Both.
Both? In the spring of 2018, Do you know who was planting crops?
Todd planted the corn and Mike planted the beans.
And in 2018, do you know who would harvest crops?
In 2018, it was Todd that ran the combine along with Mike.
Can you tell us about your relationship with Todd's wife, Amy?
I was in their wedding. I am the godmother of their daughter. At holidays, we would play cards together, do the dishes together, throw darts in the yard. I would stop on occasion to the farm and just visit.
I want to talk now specifically about the summer and the fall of 2018, okay?
Okay.
Do you remember learning that Amy's grandmother was ill and eventually passed away?
Yes.
Did you learn about any other family issues that Amy had going on that were affecting Todd and the kids?
I believe that her uncle was also in the hospital. He had some sort of brain bleed, and she was assisting her mom in taking care of her uncle.
Do you know if that required Amy to be gone from Delaware County at times?
Yes.
Did you have interactions with Todd and the kids and Amy during the summer and the fall of 2018?
Yeah, I would see them on occasion, yes.
Did you have any concerns about Todd and Amy's relationship?
None.
I want to talk now specifically about November 10th, 2018. Do you remember what you were doing that day?
I was babysitting my 2 grandsons.
Did you get a call that day about Amy?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you did after you got that call?
After I got the call, I assigned the babysitting duties to my husband, and I jumped in the car and I went to the hospital.
What did you see when you got to the hospital?
At the hospital, we went into the family room, and there was some friends that were in the family room along with Todd sitting in a chair. His eyes were red. I could tell he had been probably crying or was upset. And there was, I believe, I'm not exact, but I think that, there was other people in the room, but I don't know who they were.
Okay, no, that's okay. And if I ever ask a question that you're not sure about, please ask me to ask it again.
Okay.
While you were in the waiting room, did you learn that Amy passed away?
They had come and asked Todd to go back to the emergency room where she was at, and when he came back, they said she had passed away.
At this point in time, what was your understanding of what had happened to Amy?
There was a farm accident at the farm, something with the red shed.
Did you help Todd with the logistics and the arrangements for Amy after that point?
Yes.
Did you help him make the funeral arrangements?
Yes, I went along with her mom and stepdad, and Taylor, I believe, also went along to help, and we made the funeral arrangements in Manchester.
After the funeral arrangements had been made, did you learn that there were concerns that Amy's death was not an accident?
When I was going up to the farm, on, I believe it was the 16th, I had called Todd that I was on the way, and he said that he had gotten a call from Sheriff LeClaire that he wanted him to stop in at the office, and they were gonna get the file basically kind of wrapped up, closed up, and so we could move on. So,
and I don't want you to, I want to make sure I keep asking. So on November 16th, is that when you became aware that there were concerns about Amy's death not being an accident?
yes.
Okay. And so at that point you learned that the sheriff wanted to see Todd. What did you do?
I picked him up and I drove him to the sheriff's office for this interview to get it wrapped up. I waited in the waiting room.
Do you know how long you were in the waiting room while Todd was with the sheriff?
It was approximately 2 to 3 hours at least.
What happened when you and Todd left the sheriff's office that day?
They had told me they issued us, what do they call them, subpoena, and that they wanted to get Amy's phone from the farm. And so we basically drove back to the farm then with, just in the car, with the subpoena or in our hand, was reading it, I guess.
Could it also have been like a search warrant?
Oh, yes, that's what it was, sorry.
Okay. At that time, did you learn what investigators thought had happened to Amy?
I'm going to object. This is calling for based upon hearsay.
Well, overruled. The witness can testify as to her understanding.
When I went into the interview room, Agent Turbot had said that we know Todd did this.
So at that point, in your mind, what are you doing? What are your next steps?
I guess I was in shock, number one. Next step, I thought, where are you?
Is lawyer Seward sitting down there and thinking she can both have bangs and a small pompadour? This lady must be blessed in some way.
Coming up with this because it was a farm accident. And I was trying to think, who do I call? So.
Did you contact an attorney between the sheriff's office and the farm?
Say that again.
Did you contact an attorney between leaving the sheriff's office and arriving at the farm?
Yes.
Were you at Todd and Amy's then when the search warrant was executed on the 16th?
Yes.
How would you characterize your interactions with law enforcement during that process?
After we had given them the phone, they wanted to see the buildings, and
If it works, just keep doing it. I'm going back to the spiky 90s cut soon as well.
And when we were walking to the building, Travis Hemesath turned around and said, "You need to tell your brother."
Sustained.
If you can characterize it without repeating what someone said to you, as far as was it hostile or angry? Was there a lot of back and forth? What do you recall observing and being a part of?
Can you re-ask that again? Sorry.
Yeah. When the search warrant is being executed on the 16th, can you describe for us what was happening? Were officers also talking with you and Todd?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, on hearsay and backdoor hearsay, even if we're cabining it where it's not saying specifically what they said, it's based upon.
Are you on spring break? Or is it too early for being on spring break? I don't know what spring break is. I just saw an SNL skit about spring break. It looked like it could be fun.
Those statements and observations of those statements.
Yeah, I mean, I think that question is probably inviting hearsay, Ms. Nichols-Cook. I'm not sure if maybe you can rephrase.
Let me try, Your Honor. Thank you. Would you characterize the interactions that you had with investigators as being aggressive towards you?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Yes.
After the search warrant was executed, did you help Todd make any adjustments to the funeral arrangements for Amy?
Yes. We spoke with Bob Sabers, and we just plain asked him, do we want to wait on getting the cremation process delayed if there's going to be issues.
I'd like to show the witness Exhibit 310, just the first page.
Thank you so much, Brandon. But still, if you can worky, and then swing by a spring break party and teach some 18-year-old girls how to drink Goldschlager, why not mix business and pleasure? Just only teach them about the Goldschlager, nothing else. Your wife probably wouldn't approve.
Page. Let me know if it pops up on your screen.
The hell?
It's not popping up for some reason. Just a second here, Counsel.
Your Honor, may we approach the witness and show her one of our screens?
You certainly can. It's not acting like it's connected at all, so I'm not sure what the issue is.
Ms. White, do you recognize that document?
Yeah.
You, sir, is a philanthropist. You are always taking care of the needy.
Yes.
Can you tell us what it is?
It was the letter that was drafted to the, by Leonard Funeral Home in order to
If any of them is named McLovin, don't take them to your room.
have them delay the cremation.
I object on hearsay on this letter. The letter's not in evidence, and it's signed by Mr. Mullis, so it's hearsay.
Okay. The objection's overruled. The answer will remain in the record. And you had not offered it yet, correct, Ms. Nichols-Cook? All right.
Ms. White, did you help Todd write this letter?
We talked to the funeral home, and the funeral home director is the one that wrote it.
And did you?
I was
type
on the
it up
phone
and
call.
prepare it?
I was on the phone call with the funeral director at the time, yes.
Did you type up this letter?
I don't remember.
Have you seen this letter before today?
Yes.
He said as much to when the state cross-examined him that he more or less believed that it was an unaliving.
And is what you
This is Todd's older sister.
have seen today a true and accurate representation of the letter that you helped Todd prepare for the funeral home?
Yes.
At this point, we would move page 1 of 310 into evidence.
Mr. Bakke?
With the caveat, we're just talking about page 1. I have no objection on foundation, but I would object on the same hearsay grounds that it's signed by Mr. Mullis.
.310, page 1 is admitted. The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. White, I want to move on a little bit and talk about, you mentioned Bob Sabers earlier. Is he an attorney?
Yes.
Were you involved in hiring counsel or representation for your brother Todd?
I assisted, yes.
Is Mr. Sabers one of those attorneys that you met with and hired?
Yes.
Do you recall when you first hired Mr. Sabers?
After talking to the lawyer on the way back to the farm, we also asked him, you know, it was not the type of law that he had or practiced, so he...
We don't have a lot of elephants in Northern Europe. It's mainly in India and Africa. We do have elephants at the Carlsberg brewery, and they have Indian sun signs carved into their plinth. And our queen, well, our king now, has a special order that he can give people called the Order of the Elephant. I believe it's from maybe Christian IV who instated it.
Suggested some names. We're like, who do we talk to? So
No, it's just because people think that he got a raw deal in the first trial. There's been nothing new other than the biomechanical engineer that in any way supports a new trial. And I'm convinced he's not going to get it. But Jamie watched the trial. He had a really bad lawyer. But still, he had a defense. So ineffective of counsel is out the window.
he suggested some names, and we called Bob. Actually, I called Bob, but...
Thank you. Do you recall the date that Todd was arrested for Amy's murder?
February of 2019.
And at that time, did you let Mr. Sabers know about the arrest?
Yes. I was at work, and I got a phone call from my brother Mike, and so then I proceeded to call Bob and find out what was going on.
And so at some point, did another attorney become involved in representing Todd on these charges?
Yes.
Do you remember his name?
Jake Firehelm.
And while these attorneys were representing your brother, was Todd in the county jail?
Yes.
And at times, was he also moved to the Buchanan County Jail?
Yes.
What was your role with the attorneys while they were representing Todd?
I was kind of the middleman as far as communications. I was the gopher to find information to get to them.
Were you in communication with Todd while he was in the county jail?
Yes, he would call.
How often would he call you?
Oh, probably at every 2 or 3 days, every day. It just depended on the week.
When you said you were the middleman or the person, does that mean you were asking the attorneys questions?
Yes.
And were you also then providing them information or answers to their questions?
Yes, correct.
Was Todd asking you questions?
Yes.
Were you able to give Todd any answers?
None other than they're working on things, because I didn't want to get into details over the phone.
And why was that?
The phone calls are recorded.
Do you recall Todd writing notes and letters to the...
This is the Danish flag. It's sent to us by God while we were beating the heathens in, I believe it's Lithuania, in 68, 65, 35, something. This is the oldest still used national flag in the world. No elephants, but God gave it to us, and then we went and beat the heathens. They had been christened before, but they had been christened by either some Germans or Polish guys, so we made sure we christened them one more time. And God said thank you and gave us our flag. That was a great victory by the guy who then became known as King Valdemar Victory. So in our royal flag we have, I don't know, they just changed it, but we used to have lions, polar bears, lions and polar bears. I don't think we ever had the elephants. But yes, the world's oldest national flag, given to us by God himself, so we could go beat the heathens. Even if they might not have been all that heathen. But you can never be converted too many times, especially when we could get a little part of country that we needed.
The attorneys while he was in jail?
Yes.
Would you also then get copies of those from the attorneys?
I would get the originals from the attorney.
I want to show the witness a prior exhibit 233.
Oh, and it came up. It popped up now.
Thank you. Ms. White, this exhibit has several pages, but looking at the first page, do you recognize it?
Yes, it's one of Todd's letters.
And we can scroll slowly for you. Does this appear to be a continuation of Todd's writing?
Yes.
Okay. What about this page?
Yes.
And the next one?
Yes.
And the next one?
Jamie, I'm sorry. Breaking news. Have you heard Amaranth has had a home invasion?
I don't know who that is.
She's a famous e-thought who's she's a lady who makes so much money that she needs to buy gas stations to spend her money on. And there's a video where she's having a Ronkel shared it, and I absolutely have no idea about anything, of course, because I, for one, trust all women.
Of
You know
course.
that about me. She alleges that she was. I'm just gonna. She alleges that she had a home invasion. Her first post, because her first thing was go on Twitter, right? I'm having a home invasion. They woke me up with pew-pews to my face. I pew-pewed one of them. And allegedly, this is her Nest Cam. I'm just going to show it because it's breaking news, Jamie. This is Amaranth.
I'm in here. It's in here. I'm so sorry. Come on.
He has a pew-pew stick. Closes the door. There, that's nice. It saves them the heating bill. What sounds like 3 pew-pews. I don't know.
Is that even real?
What I saw when I watched it the first time, I thought, it's weird how she slows down and says, it's in here, it's in here. It's almost like, well, she claims they were there to get her crypto, but she said she was woken up in bed, so she must sleep somewhere over here. And then she runs over here. Look at the dog's behavior, Jamie, and then think about you two dogs.
I'm in here. It's in here. I'm so sorry. Come on. Go, 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 go.
The 3 pew-pews, the dogs doesn't really react to it. And these guys runs out of the door less than a second after. But did you notice how the dogs just looks at them when they run over there? How would your dogs have reacted if you came running with 3 guys after you? Not that you would ever have been outside for that long, but
I mean, I don't know.
if your dogs was in the driveway, would that dog just have looked weird at the guy chasing you while you were running scared for your life? Or would I've heard them just if you get excited on a stream, they'll bark like.
Well, if I get excited in the house or whatever, they chase me around and bark at me. So
Yeah, I'm
what
just
they would do.
I'm just saying. I for one trust all women, Jamie, and you shouldn't imply that this could be to get attention. I believe that she had a home invasion and she must have pew-pewed one of them.
Yeah. It just seems phony, but who knows?
No, because the dogs clearly alerted to them. And you know, dogs, if the owner is running and someone is chasing them, they think, oh, I'm just going to go run away again.
My one dog
They
is
didn't
scared
even
of
bark when
pencils.
she pew-pewed. And I love that they go inside and then you hear the pew-pew and they run straight out. It takes, I don't know how long they were in her. She also put up a picture that they kept pew-pewing her door and kicking it down. I don't really get that to match up with any of this. But Jamie, I trust and believe all women. Don't say anything negative about anyone.
People on the
Yes.
internet.
And on this one, do you see a date at the top?
Yes, August 29th, 2019.
Based on your recollection, is this before the criminal trial?
Yes, that was in September.
Next page. Is this also Todd's writing and a continuation of the prior letter?
Yes.
And same question here.
Yes, continuation.
And we've covered all the pages in that exhibit. So can you tell us a little bit about what types of questions and information?
And Jamie, anytime I've been robbed by gunpoint, I always tweet about it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, why wouldn't
And then
you?
then when there's video, I'll say, they wanted crypto is what they were yelling. They pulled me out of bed. You could clearly see that in the video, Jamie. Stop implying. I believe all women.
Todd was looking for while he was in jail?
Well, he kept asking if we were going to have the scene recreated, if we could possibly get experts on what they were looking for.
I'm going to object on hearsay grounds. Party opponent to himself.
Overruled. You may continue with your answer.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I'll ask you another question. Did Todd and you have conversations before he went to jail about?
Very American for a floppy fish market to want a few hundred mil. She has a few hundred mil, I think. She made like 30 mil last year on OnlyFans, which is a detriment to young men around the world. You should really not pay that much. And then she had her husband who took care of all her accounts and forced her to do it. And then she still does it, even though she allegedly got a divorce. I don't know why I know so much about e-thoughts. But now she is a victim of a home invasion. Luckily, she clipped one of them. She needs new dogs. Jamie, can she borrow your dogs? Your dogs.
My
would
dogs
never
are
have
scared of pew-pews, so by the way, so they're very useless.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have waited while they ran across the yard chasing you till someone pulled a pew-pew.
The minute they would have heard it, they would have been out of there.
The second you were screaming, they would think, "Oh, we're playing," and they would have ran at these people.
You know, what would happen if he was arrested?
Yes.
And did you get kind of chosen to help, be a voice for him?
Yes.
And so when Todd would communicate with you, either via letter or phone calls, would you take concerns that he had to the attorneys?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Yes. I would call them and just call them like every day. What's going on? What are we doing?
And did you also send them emails?
Yes.
At any point, did they start sending you updates about the case and what was happening?
They would send phrases along saying we're working on things and just tell me they're working on things. I mean,
what was your understanding of what that meant? We're working on things.
Objection. It's based on hearsay and vague.
Sustained.
Fake?
What did you think was happening at that time?
Objection calls for speculation.
Asking for her own understanding and to explain the actions that she takes next. It's not asking her to repeat any out-of-court statement for the truth of the matter. It's what she thought was happening.
If you can clarify as to the time period, the witness may answer.
Ms. White, during the time after Todd's arrest, before his trial, when you would have conversations with the attorneys and they told you they were working on things, what did you think was happening?
I'm going to object again on hearsay and speculation.
Overruled.
well, they shared things with me, And in sharing things with me, I would ask them what's being done about materials they had shared with me. If they were working on things, we kept telling them too, it's an accident. What are you finding out? Are you going to recreate this? What are you doing?
Okay. And you said they were sharing things with you. What types of things were you getting?
I got just about everything. Medical examiner reports, her medical records. I got police reports. I got the Celebrate information. That's what I can recall right now.
And I know earlier I briefly asked about your work history, but to clarify, that didn't include any investigative training or experience?
No.
Any cell phone, Celebrate
No.
type of experience? Do you remember talking with anyone else besides the attorneys directly during this process, during this time period of leading up to trial, that worked with the attorneys?
Yes. I
would that
talked to the secretary for Jake Firehelm, and the two of us collaborated on a lot of the issues that we had in front of us. I would do things on the Celebrate. I would work up reports and figure out how to get everything in line, and then I would call Christy and ask her if she saw the same thing, and told her basically, she's like, how did you get that? So then I went through the steps on pulling up the Celebrate information and told her how to basically connect everything together. And then she would let me know that she was going to show this to the attorney, Dake, and share it with Bob.
Did you ask her
What?
if they had an expert to review the
I
digital?
told her, I asked her, I said, we need somebody to look at all this. We need a computer guy to do this. But when she asked, well, how did you get that report? I would explain to her and tell her in detail how I come up with the report I had.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your objection.
Hearsay. Thank you.
Overruled, the answer will remain in the record.
To your knowledge, as the person who was representing your family with these attorneys, did either attorney ever consult or hire an expert to review the evidence that you were getting copies of?
We asked several times, but I was not informed anybody was hired, and I kept inquiring, who do we have?
In the weeks leading up to the trial, did the attorneys ask you or the family for any information or assistance?
Yes, we provided them with drone footage of the farm a few days before the trial. We provided them with pictures of the barns, the area where Todd was working at. We provided, actually, Bob had emailed me asking me if I would draft some questions about.
Objection. Hearsay.
Sustained.
It's okay. So was this the first time they'd asked you to do things to help with their
Not the
representation?
first time. I offered, what can we do? How can we help? What do we need to do to help in the accident? To get information out to show.
And then did you write questions for witnesses
Yes.
and provide those to the attorneys?
Yes, since the attorneys didn't have a background on some of the people on the deposition list, they just said, can you give us a little background on these people and maybe draft some questions as to what to ask them in the deposition?
Had you ever hired and worked with attorneys before?
Hired, I've got a tax attorney. Other than that, through my work at the city, we had a city attorney. At my job now, we have attorneys there. I don't hire them, but I
For a
work with
personal
them.
matter, for a family matter like this?
There's a dog running around we have that little pathway outside of my front door. That was a dog.
Uh-oh. Did you go snatch it up?
No, because it ran away when, I think it's from a house over on the other side. We have like a old road for fire trucks to go down behind the house. So I think it got out of a garden and then jumped into just to see, because I could hear it bark. And then I heard something at the trash cans. Looked out and there was a dog standing there. What? And I said, hey, buddy. Tried to get it over to see if it had a number on it. And it just ran off again. But it's so weird.
Hey, buddy.
Well, I didn't say buddy because Danish dogs don't speak English. So
Dogs
I
didn't like
just
that.
said, come here, come. And then it ran away. Maybe I'm being home invaded. Jamie, I'm just about to tweet I'm being home invaded.
Will you please make sure?
Yeah.
Not for a family matter like this, no.
Did you have concerns
Kammerat.
that you brought up to the attorneys
Marker.
before trial?
I kept asking them, are you going to talk to Todd about what's going on? Are you in communications with him? Does he have everything he needs as far as what's going to be presented? Several times we talked.
What was your impression after phone calls with Todd about whether he had information about what the attorneys were doing?
I'm going to object that this is based on hearsay or backdoor hearsay.
Sustained.
I need just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Would Todd communicate frustration to you?
Yes.
Same objection.
I'm not asking for a statement. It can't be hearsay if it's not a statement. So I would...
Overrule. The
Thank
answer will
you.
remain in the record.
Were you able to discern why Todd was frustrated?
Yes, he would state that the attorneys would, sorry,
Objection, hearsay.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
Without telling me what Todd would say, could you discern, what it is you needed to do next?
Objection, this is backdoor hearsay.
I'm asking for her actions, what she did next. So it's not truth of what Todd said, it's the effect it had on her and what she did.
The objection's overruled. Ms. White, just be careful to talk about what your actions were and not what statements were made to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, you may proceed.
The actions that were taken was to get a hold of the attorneys and see what was going on.
So you were asking more questions?
Yes.
And would you also send them emails?
Yes.
Did they ever ask you to review pleadings before they filed them?
Yes, they would send me drafts, and I would help them with some grammar and punctuation, that type thing, yes.
Prior to trial, did you ever learn that the attorneys were not going to pursue an accident theory?
No.
Did you attend the criminal trial?
Yes, every day.
Were you present in the courtroom during the defense opening statement?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Yes, I was.
What was your reaction to the opening statement?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
Shock and dismay, wondering where it came from.
During the trial, did you attempt to speak with the attorneys?
Yes.
Did you ask them questions?
Yes.
Did that include wanting to know what the plan was for the trial?
Yes.
If you had been informed before the beginning of the trial that counsel was going to concede Amy's death was a homicide, would you have done anything?
I'm going to object as calls for speculation and relevance as to her thoughts of what the trial strategy was.
Sustained.
Ms. White, if you had been informed or made aware about counsel's opening statement, would you have taken any action?
Yes.
What would you have done?
Objection, this is relevance into what her actions or statements or conduct would have been in response to trial counsel's trial strategy is not relevant.
Right. Sustained.
If you had known, would you have gotten new counsel for your brother?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Were you ever consulted about conceding homicide?
Same objection.
Overruled.
No.
To your knowledge, was Todd ever consulted?
Objection. There's no foundation that she was aware of every conversation between trial counsel and relevance, even if there was.
This isn't really working.
Overruled.
I was not aware of any communications on that, no.
Do you recall talking with Todd after he testified at his trial?
Yes, he called us on the way home, I believe.
Was he upset?
Yes,
Were you upset?
correct.
At that time, in 2019, did you think Amy's death was an accident?
Say that one more time.
At the time of the trial in 2019, did you think Amy's death was an accident?
Yes.
Have you learned anything that's ever changed
No.
your mind? Did you meet with the attorneys after the trial?
Yes. We met with Jake. Bob, we didn't meet with him, I don't believe.
Did you ever learn that Todd now thought Amy's death was a homicide?
Objection based on hearsay or backdoor hearsay. If she learned that information, it's based on statements that were made to her. So even if it's cabined in such a way that it's not reflecting the statement, it is based upon the information that was learned that is hearsay.
Sustained.
Ms. White, has your brother always maintained his innocence to you?
Yes.
And then I think I just have maybe one thing I forgot to ask you in the beginning. Do you recognize this glass fixture that I'm holding up?
Yes.
Can you tell me what it is?
It's a light cover that they use in the hog buildings to go over the light bulbs.
Did you provide this to the attorneys?
Yes.
The current attorneys for Mr. Mullis?
Yes, I did.
And did it come from the hog barn at the Mullis farm?
Correct.
Your Honor, at this point, we would move to move Exhibit 275 in.
Any objection?
Not on foundation, just on relevance.
275 is admitted.
Your Honor, I know it's noon, and I need to queue up perhaps my last exhibit. So if the court could give me a minute, or if the court wants us to come back after lunch, I'm fine either way. I just...
get moving.
We can keep going, I think, if it makes sense to finish up your direct.
Is she hitting on him? Come on.
She's just a nice lady.
Yeah, but she's trying to get this guy a new trial. They need to get their act
Ms. White,
together.
do you remember, we were talking earlier about talking with Todd after he testified at his trial, if that would have been September 22nd, 2019?
Yes.
And I know you mentioned earlier that the calls, when Todd would call you from the jail, they would be recorded. So do you remember him expressing frustration about the questions he was asked on cross-examination?
I'm going to object on hearsay again.
So far, as long as you're not responding to specific statements that were made, the objection will be overruled. You can answer.
Was he expressing frustration?
Yes.
And Your Honor, I would like to play this call that we're talking about. I believe it's a prior consistent statement of Mr. Mullis, and so it would satisfy an exception to any hearsay objection to aid Ms. White in her testimony.
And I anticipate I know which jail call this is, Your Honor, and I would object that this is not a prior consistent statement that was made under oath at a prior court proceeding. This is simply a jail call between Mr. Mullis.
No, I don't understand the light bulb, because that's what she was doing earlier in the hog barn. Then she had to go get a dog crate to put some kittens in. And that's where she fell. So I don't know why we need the light fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was just saying she brought it in to show them what it looked like.
It has
so
nothing to do with the accident.
Well, that was the whole thing, is she was in the hog barn cleaning those, taking those out and cleaning.
But it has
those
nothing
when
to
she
do with
was-
the accident.
I know, but when she was getting dizzy and stuff, so I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
they
but
just wanted
she
to
didn't
show.
elicit that testimony. She was just saying, is this a light fixture? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. They are constantly talking about something that goes nowhere.
Well, to just say that she brought it in to give it to his lawyers to say, hey, look, this is one of the light bulbs for them to maybe use or something. I don't know what it.
But
I
use
get
them
that.
for what?
Yeah. To like show the jury what she was doing. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I don't know how that would really work out.
No, that's what I'm saying. They are wasting so much time about nothing, because what happened in the hog barn has nothing to do with how she died. Other
Yeah.
than she was dizzy. If she was screwing in a light bulb or a light fixture over a light bulb or doing the polka, has nothing to do with it. She felt dizzy, she went to another room, and that's where she fell off something.
Yeah. Well, I took it as like this lady was trying to give these lawyers all the stuff and they were just like, no, we're going to do our own thing. That's the perception I had of it.
Yeah, but she's talking. I just
Yeah.
I just feel it's a waste. Again, it's waste of time. And well, it's because I know that the judge will rule not in his favor.
Yeah.
And his family member, it falls directly within hearsay. Mr. Mullis, of course, could have testified about his own recollections, but he can't testify through another witness.
Which exhibit is this?
It's in the jail calls, I think 375, and there's 686 jail calls in there by my count. So.
Ms. Nichols-Cook, I guess, as far as the issue of it being an exception or not, any further record you wish to make on that?
Yes, Your Honor, I think that there was a lot of cross questions about Todd's testimony at trial and whether he conceded it was a homicide in his testimony. And this phone call comes directly after that, in which Mr. Mullis explains that he still thinks it's an accident, but he didn't know how else to answer that question on cross-examination. And it is consistent with all of his prior statements to law enforcement that her death or her injuries were the result of an accident. And that is what he continued to tell his family and his attorneys throughout the process.
Okay, again, though, if this is Mr. Mullis's statement that you're using, correct, not this witness's?
Yes.
All right. So we'd still have a hearsay problem then, it sounds like.
I do think it could also fall under the residual hearsay exception.
And just for purposes of the record, there has been no notice of residual hearsay exception being intended to be used at this trial.
So at this point, I'm not thinking that this would be admissible.
Okay, I can move on, Your Honor, and ask the final question. Ms. White, have you continued to support your brother throughout his legal proceedings?
Yes.
No further questions.
Okay, Ms. White, you may step down for now.
Your Honor, I think I can keep this very brief if that's acceptable.
Absolutely, certainly. You may go ahead with your cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I guess good afternoon now, Ms. White.
Good afternoon.
It's just so we're all clear, you are Todd's sister, right?
Yes.
And it's fair to say you love your brother.
Yes.
You care very deeply about him.
Yes.
And that you did everything you could in your power to assist him with his defense.
To keep communications between him and the lawyers and just to keep the ball rolling, yes.
And you still believe in his innocence and want to see him be successful in this action. Is that fair?
He is innocent.
You were asked a couple questions about helping review pleadings. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Would an example of that be, so there was a bond issue, I believe. Were you asked to review specifics about how much land Todd owned, for example?
I had to give background on that, yes.
So that would be an example of specifics you were providing to the attorneys to put into the pleadings?
Just a small portion.
You were also aware, or are you aware generally, that if an attorney talks to you, if you're not the client, that it would waive attorney-client privilege?
I was not aware of that.
Are you aware of it now, generally?
I did not know that, no. I believe Todd had permission with the attorneys, or told the attorneys that they should be talking to me as well, so that I could be his middleman on the outside, I guess you'd say, to help with communications and make sure that the process was functioning and moving along.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
One question, Your Honor. Ms. White, did the attorneys ever give you any information about what their strategy was going to be to pass on to the family or to Mr. Mullis?
Never.
No further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor, and just for the record, we would release Ms. White from our subpoena as well. And thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now you may sit down, Ms. White.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. I think, counsel, based on our earlier discussion this morning, Ms. White may be our last in-person witness. Is that correct, at least from the applicant's side?
Yes, Your Honor, that's my understanding.
Okay. I know that we have several witnesses that will be presented through their deposition testimony or by stipulation or other agreement. And the state may need an opportunity to confer before there's any final plan as far as presentation of in-person testimony. I don't know, counsel, were you in a position to commit to that at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, I can commit. As the court and both parties know, we have been attempting to ask our questions during cross-examinations to streamline matters, so we will have no additional witnesses to call at this time, just the depositions and the evidence that has been presented.
Okay. So I guess more for the benefit of those who are here observing, there would not be any additional in-person testimony. The remaining matters that need to be addressed between the parties and the court would consist of arguments regarding some remaining evidentiary issues, and then I guess discussions and clarifications regarding the agreements regarding the remaining witnesses that we have to talk about. I know that counsel is continuing to work on some agreements as far as how that testimony would come in specifically for the court's consideration. So we'll certainly pick up with that after lunch. And then once we've concluded that, I'll provide both parties with an opportunity for some limited oral closing argument. And both parties will then also have an opportunity to submit brief written legal briefs to the court to identify any legal authority that they believe would be particularly helpful. So we'll discuss deadlines for that as well when we come back this afternoon. I anticipate that our arguments and our discussion regarding the evidentiary issues will take some time. I would propose that both parties have up to 15 minutes for any oral closing argument that they wish this afternoon. I'll also provide the applicant an additional 5 minutes for a rebuttal closing, since it is the applicant's burden.
15 minutes oral, that'll give you a sore jaw.
We'll plan on concluding with that at the very end of everything else that we need to do this afternoon. Anything of a housekeeping nature that we should address then before we break for lunch on behalf of the applicant?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, let's plan on picking back up then at 1:30. All right, I'll see you back here then. Thank you.
Jamie, you know how much I love the Commonwealth, right?
Yeah. 100%.
You know that I always, whenever they file a new motion, I'm always looking forward to it because it's always so well done and so professional.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, can you tell me what a special prosecutor Hank Brennan is?
He really needs to spell check some things.
I know this is made by an intern or a legal aid, but special prosecutor Hank Brennan, the guy who just got a new deal for $225,000, is now Hank Brennan special prosecutor. At least they didn't misspell his name in this one.
Mhm.
Do better.
I mean, I thought that's what like the little legal assistant people do, is they make sure it's all like looks good and
They wrote it not once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. I know she just copy pasted it, whoever filed this one, but he did e-sign it. So Hank Brennan is now a special prosecutor.
yes, he
Could
is.
be his prosecutor. We never know if he's prosecutor, or maybe he's anti-sector. We so far all we can say is another great job by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm dyslexic. I look for all the red scribbles underneath the words, and then I'll right click and oh yeah, that looks right. Or I'll send it to Marissa and she'll laugh at me and say, "Are you riding the short bus?" This guy is getting $225,000 out of the good people of Massachusetts. And he has a legal aid who can't spell his name, can't spell his role. If you're working for the prosecutor's office, is it too much to demand that you know it's a special prosecutor? It's not a special prosecutor.
I like prosector better.
Yeah. He could be a protractor.
Protractor.
Did she say when we were coming back?
1:30.
Well, that's when I set my stream up to. I am witchy. We have a poll that's very important, and sadly, I have to yell at my crew because 50% believes that weird gold-loving leprechauns are real, and only 49% knows the evil gnomes are the real ones. People, you are not watching enough of my shows where I clearly have given you all the evidence that gnomes are not only real, but also evil. You should do better. Jamie
they are
will
jerks.
yell at you now. Jamie, tell them about the gnomes.
Apparently, if you don't give them gifts, they'll just destroy your home, destroy your farms. They're mean little things. And they're creepy looking. So,
No, I can't give you an option when one of them clearly is not wrong. There's no such thing as a leprechaun. It's just some video thing Jamie loves. That's
every day, I still see it on my Prime. Leprechaun in
Prospector.
bed.
Yeah, he's making gold in Massachusetts. Not known for a lot of gold, but he's making tons of it. What if the leprechauns are just the ancestors of the gnomes that came with the Vikings, but they're not real? This is just. Yeah, they'll burn down her house and make her cattle lame.
Well, I mean, then I'll believe you, I guess. Wouldn't it be funny?
You should believe me because I'm just as much always right as Plevin.
So that's, you're right.
Right
Every
all the time.
60% of the time.
Yeah, 65% of the time it's wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And Jamie, you know, I love the great state of Minnesota where you're from.
Yeah.
So I might look into this more when I ever get to do a Baker by Night again. I might take a look at this because this looks very interesting. I might need to have the expert on for this video. This is an interview of the Minnesota Bigfoot research team.
Wood knocking or tree knocking is used by them to communicate. Oh. So when we go out there, we use this, we bang those on the trees, and it creates a nice acoustical sound that really travels. So that's how we do, and we do get replies from that technique.
Oh,
yes.
Where do these casts come from?
All over the place. The three right by you.
I need to have the expert on and watch this.
Yeah. You discuss.
Let's
When in preparation for trial, I talked to Ellen Reader, who's our first pathologist.
apparently I don't know if you saw that. That's a case that was supposed to start today, the Blake Linkhus trial, where she got by her boyfriend in Myrtle Beach. He's apparently taking a plea deal. They're having a plea hearing right now. I was thinking, looking into it, but apparently he's taking a plea.
Well, isn't that our luck all the time?
And they burned down your sauna buildings. Yeah, Vilo knows all about them. We know all about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so they can make acoustic sounds on the trees to communicate with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
How's many hours till Jamie is in Baker's territory? Friday at 11. So I can't do that much math on my foot.
Me neither.
Dudes look for Bigfoot to hide from their wives. No, it's very serious investigatings. It's not something we just say to get out of the house and say, but honey, can I go bang a tree with my baseball bat? It's me and the guys are communicating with Bigfoot.
Science. It's for science.
Yeah. Jamie, this case is annoying me because I don't like Todd Mullis' team, and I've just figured out I have misspelled his name in my thumbnail. I'm not going back and making a new one. Do I think there was reasonable doubt there? Maybe. Do I think he's going to get it? No. Why? Because I don't think his team has proven enough that the judge should change their mind. I'm sorry, but that's how I see it. It's not what in the perfect world and all of that, but we have to be realistic. It seems like she said they were going to end it today.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Maybe it's the Sasquatch. Well, we know there's Bigfoot because there was that guy who got raped. Well, not twice by a female Bigfoot. Well, he got raped once, and then I think she came back and showed him the kid. Wasn't that the story?
Something like that.
I need at some point when I have some time to get up early. Me and the expert needs to do a Bigfoot special where we look at all the evidence.
Yeah, you got to revisit. I forgot what that guy's name was.
Yeah. But interesting, fellas. But roughly an hour, we'll be back to get what seems to be the end of this, which would be very, very good because we have a full program of Karen Reed this week. So it'll be nice not to leave it hanging. Jamie?
Yes, because I'd like to know.
Will we see you in the end? In the afternoon, sorry.
Hopefully. I have to do something on my lunch, but other than that, I should be back.
I need to go make some lunch as well. See you all later. And oh, I have to redirect to my later stream because I have to keep those numbers up, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the wrong one. That's tomorrow.
What exhibit are you referring to? I'm going to make this 100, Your Honor. All right, 100.
100.
Because it is 100%
100%.
correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
So you literally built a cannon?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
All right, I'm in love.
Go back. Please do that again. Oh, that was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
While I'm waiting for this, did you, whether it's true or not, believe that Mr. Randolph had slept with your wife?
I wouldn't have cared.
You wouldn't have cared?
No.
Did you believe he had slept with your wife?
No.
Did you believe he slept with your mother-in-law?
Probably did. Everybody has.
So there.
Everybody has.